Okay, welcome to the November 19th Parks and Recreation Commission meeting in Alto. Meeting tonight at Coverly Community Center. And first we'd like to have the roll call. Catherine?
Stacy Ashland, Deidre Cromie.
Here.
Jennifer Hedderly.
Here.
Abby Knopper.
Here.
Ed Lowing.
Here.
Pat Markovich.
Here.
Keith Rechtel.
Here.
And Greg Schmidt.
Not quite here. For any, well, let's do any agenda changes, requests, or deletions. Or do we like the batting order of the agenda? No changes, that's fine. So, relative to oral communications, if there are any members of the public here that would like to speak to the commission on any subject, please fill out a speaker card and submit it to our admin. And we might have some reasonable time restriction on that. Where are you? Otherwise, the first item of agenda is the approval of draft minutes from the October 22nd, 2013 meeting. All of that has been circulated in advance. All 64 pages of this transcript have been circulated in advance, so we would like to start with corrections.
I have some.
Commissioner Cromie?
Thank you. So starting on line 960. I'd like to change the words golf course to bowl, B-O-W-L. I was talking about the Palo Alto Bowl, not the golf course. And then on 1189, there's just sort of a hanging sentence here on line 1189 where it says people did speak. I just like that struck out. And then the next one is on line 1712. And that should just say on line 1712, instead of we left a postcard, it should be plural, we left postcards. And then two more I have, 1753. I'm sorry, it's 1755. It says the corner of San Antonio, and then just add and El Camino Real. And then last one, line 1771 should say, because it's very close to Mountain Views Del Medio Park. And then on line 1772, where it says they tore down 2 houses and built a new park, it should just say they tore down 2 houses and built Del Medio Park.
Can you spell that for me, Del
It's
Medio?
2 words, capital D-E-L and then capital M-E-D-I-O.
Yeah, it was inaudible, and I
Yeah,
didn't know
that's
how to
okay.
fix it.
And I think that's it for me.
Other commissioners with changes? No? Oh, I got a good one for you. Line 423. There was a calculation of 10% that came up at 38,000. That's actually 380,000.
I read that and thought it was kind of low. Yeah.
Kind of low.
Yeah, thank you for catching that.
At 1288, there was a reference to a couple of issues at Baylands, and then at that point, they weren't specified. We talked about one, although it was picked up later, so if there's a way to clarify that, that'd be helpful. And that's it for me. No others? Can we get a motion to approve as corrected?
So moved.
Commissioner Markovich?
One second.
And a second. All in favor of approval as corrected? Aye.
Aye.
Unanimous? Thank you. So the next item of business is to provide some feedback to our guest speaker on the Know Your Neighbors grant program for 2012-13. So, Cash?
Thank you so much, Commissioners. My name is Cash. I work with the City Manager's Office as a Senior Management Analyst. Had the opportunity to oversee the Know Your Neighbors grant program this year. It was a pilot program created by the City Council in 2012, and we launched it in 2013. Before you, you have copies of the PowerPoint presentation and then a printout of an Excel which summarizes all of the grants, the name of the activity, the association, community group it served, the date of the event, estimated attendance, and then the amount. I can go through that Excel as we go through the presentation, but just to kind of give you a little bit of background and timeline, on September 24th, 2012, former Mayor Ye and current Mayor Sharp submitted a colleagues memo to the City Council to create a Know Your Neighbors grant program. On April 11th, Council approved that colleagues memo and directed staff to proceed. On April 11th, 2013, we did launch the program. We operated the program, and it's still, one grant is still active, but we were here before you tonight to present the results and to get your feedback. And then we are planning to go to City Council on December 9th with the results of the program, as well as your feedback about the program. So just to move on to some of the goals, 4 goals: increase communication amongst neighbors, enhance the neighborhood pride and identity, bring both long-standing and new neighbors together in their neighborhoods, and to seek cooperation, interaction between generations and cultures, and to incorporate interaction between generations and cultures. Create new and innovative ideas for neighborhood events. Some facts and figures: we had a total of 39 grants. 22 were completed at a cost of $18,378.28. We have 1 active grant that's pending for $1,000. That's what they've been approved for. We had 8 grants withdraw, and then we had 5 grants submitted post their event, and so we did not approve those. We had a total of 3,175 participants. These were the estimated numbers that were received from the surveys. Again, the total cost, if you take the $18,378.28 plus the $1,000 that's active right now, gives us $19,378.28. That's a cost of $6.10 per participant. The events were broken down into really 3 different types of categories. We had 55% of them were standard block parties. We had 23 events that were focused around emergency preparedness, and then we had 27% that were unique events. Those unique events were events such as Palo Alto Yoga Day, Camp Iris, Barron Park had a movie in the park night. The College Terrace community is leading green events, and then Downtown North had Food Truck Friday nights. So those were some of the unique events. The percentage that met grant goals, so 100% of the events met the increased communication, the enhanced pride and identity, as well as including multiple generations, cultures, and the longevity of residency, bringing in residents that have been in the neighborhood a lot longer with new residents. 27% of them met the new and innovative ideas. So those were generally the unique category in the previous slide. Some grants by the type and the amount. We had 1 grant that received the reimbursement in the $100 to $250 range. 2 grants that received reimbursements in the $251 to $500 range. 2 grants that received reimbursements in the $501 to $750 range, and then 17 that received reimbursements in the $750 to $1,000 range. Before we move on, I want to read some of the testimonials that came back in the surveys relative to each category. So in the category of increased communication, we had 1 grant recipient state that They signed up over 50 families for communication on the website next door. One event occurred during an unusual heavy rainstorm, and the recipient stated that it actually turned out to be a good thing because it banded neighbors together, they brought out their canopies, and this forced the neighbors to huddle under the canopies to stay dry, which increased their bonding because they were not spread apart from one another. The connection to neighborhood and pride identity also increased. We had one recipient say that veteran residents shared stories with younger attendees and new residents about how the neighborhood had evolved over time. One recipient, in regards to the next category of bringing long-standing and new neighbors together, one recipient stated that it just wasn't the old guard. It was very popular, and younger people who had moved into the area, particularly those with children, attended the event. Some overall comments, which I think are some of the best ones, is that it said that after the event, a number of neighbors were notified about a proposed project which would allow a very large second-story home to be built in the neighborhood. Due to the event, neighbors now knew each other, and therefore it was much easier to discuss their concerns about that development project. And then finally, one recipient stated that the little girl who lives across the street from her house now comes over to visit her chickens, and that she let the little girl name her new chicken. And she stated that this would never have happened before the party. So I think those are some really nice comments about the results of the program. Just some administrative recommendations that we have. Again, this was a pilot program, so it was our first time operating. We do recommend to continue the $25,000 funding and apply the difference that's remaining from last year, in addition to that, to be carried forward. We want to further streamline the application process. I don't know if you've looked at the application. There's a section in there that lists, it asks the recipients to list the tasks that they need to complete to accomplish the event. We don't need that step in there, so we want to remove that piece from it. It just further streamlines it. We'd like to hold a community meeting before we actually accept applications. We'd like to kind of review the eligibility guidelines, discuss questions with neighborhoods, talk about submission requirements we have for reimbursements. We'd like to provide a sample budget to applicants. We'd like to discuss the concept of limiting the amount allocated for food purchases. We did see some very significant amounts spent just on food, and in some cases some really good food, and so we just wanted to kind of make sure that some funds were allocated towards activities and bounce houses and things like that. And then just to also look at funding new grants. We wanted to kind of just make sure that there was always new grants funded, not repeating some of the previous grants. And then really not to reimburse expenses, to make it very clear that we won't reimburse expenses that were commingled with personal purchases. It was a significant administrative burden to look through line by line of stacks of receipts to really distinguish what was a grant purchase and what was a personal purchase. I think from the recipient's end, it was easier if they were going shopping at Safeway to buy items for their block party as well as items for their house, and they had done a great job highlighting items, but just to keep the expenses separate. Look really forward to discussing more recommendations with you, but before we do that, I just want to show you some of the pictures. This was the earthquake party that occurred in October in Lundy Lane and Ellie Place. These are backpacks they had purchased for their event. This is an emergency kit building event that occurred on July 14th. This is a Midtown Emergency Preparedness Fair. So you can see the diversity of ages and neighbors and activities going on. This is a 4th of July party. See the bounce house in the back, and there was a common reimbursement. This is Camp Iris. It occurs in Iris Way every year, and by the map of the neighborhood, you can see how many different houses and families are involved, and you can see the picture of the kids preparing for camp. This is a block party where they had the fire department come out and talking to residents, you see the bounce house in the back, and then you see the slide of the kids playing games. This is Palo Alto Yoga Day, which occurred in Rinconada Park. And that is it as far as the presentations go. Look forward to your questions, any feedback, any comments?
I had a quick question.
Sure.
Of all of the events listed on this spreadsheet,
Uh-huh.
how many were brand new to the name? Were they all brand new, or had a lot of these parties happen before and then all of a sudden they're like, wow, the city is gonna pay now? So I'm just curious, like what percentage never existed
Yeah.
before?
I'd have to calculate the exact number, but just off the top of my head and working with the recipients, I would say that over 50% were they had done it before.
Okay.
Just as a quick scan, but I can look through the survey data and prepare that for the council meeting to have that statistic, and a further exact statistic.
Commissioner Rich?
I attended the downtown north ones because that's my neighborhood, and it was great because that time of day, it's usually the parents with the kids in the play area and nothing else.
Mhm.
And this brought out a lot of the older groups, such as myself, who don't have kids that are young enough to play in those play areas, and also people who didn't have kids. That was really nice to see, and people who got excited that, hey, there's food trucks in our neighborhood. It was unique enough that I think it had a bigger draw than if it had been something else. So they were very, very successful.
Yeah, I mentioned to Cash just before we started, we did one like 2 days late, so we couldn't submit the fees for it. But the thing that was really great about it, and I think we've done this about 3 times in the last 20 years, is that whenever you do that, I mean, there's just enough change in the neighborhood that there's just new folks. I mean, the new neighbors next door, literally. But and we actually did have a bouncy house too, so that must have been the trend this summer. But the thing that was most heartwarming is that walking around, somehow I think because food was being cooked in my driveway, I got an asterisk on my name tag which said I was an organizer or something. And this old lady who was sitting in a chair just stopped me and she said, "Oh, I'm just so delighted. I was so excited to see this notification on my door. And we put it on our calendar, and we just have to come to this. And this is fantastic." She was sitting in a lawn chair. She wasn't doing anything, but she was there with people that she hadn't met before. She was just charged up that she'd been invited. You know, it was really cool.
Yeah.
We also had about 80% correlation between people and dogs.
Oh, wow.
So it also turned into a bit of a dog run there, but I think that was
Cool.
all right. No, it wasn't. I had a question about the number that you're suggesting. Why'd you come up with that as opposed to, you know, maybe with a little bit more marketing, you could, you know, effectively distribute that 30,000 or something like that?
You mean the 25,000?
Yeah.
Why we chose that?
Yeah.
Just, it was the amount that council allocated last year, and we wanted to just at least recommend that amount, and then let really the commission and council decide, you know, based on the feedback, whether you wanted to increase it, decrease it. So there was no, from our standpoint, there was no science behind it. It was,
I would think that modestly raising that, based on the success that you've had so far,
Okay.
and getting out more visibility / marketing on it,
okay,
could be, you know, highly productive.
okay.
And what is going to be the, you mentioned community meetings to discuss some of these things on whatever that slide number is, about recommendations. Is it one meeting, or is it in multiple neighborhoods, or what kind of outreach is going to be done there?
Well, the meeting would be to launch the 2014 program.
Right.
It was not intended to discuss the results or discuss the changes. It was.
No, I understand. I just
yeah.
mean geographically, is it going to
Yeah.
be like at the community center for everyone, or are you going to move it South Palo Alto, community center, various areas?
We were thinking of having one meeting, City Hall, council chambers, but if you think we should have more than one before we launch it in different areas, I don't think we're opposed to that. That could work. I mean, certainly we were thinking of having outreach to the Palo Alto neighborhoods, and, you know, getting it up on our social media outlets,
Yeah.
and then getting it on the web, and doing a press release to announce the grant program again, and then indicate that there'll be a community meeting to discuss the details of the program.
Okay. And then you said, I think if I understand what you say, fund new grants, you mean that's the priority?
Well, we just think it'd be good to have a mechanism to where we're not funding this same grant over and over again.
So would you
And-
prioritize new ones, and then if there weren't enough new ones, then would you literally have a second priority? I know this is similar
Yeah.
to your old job where you had to prioritize fields.
Correct. I don't think it'll be that complicated.
No, I don't think so.
But I do think, yeah, I think the plan would be to look at the submittals, first of all, in the accordance that they came in, so really with a date, time stamp, and then look at them compared to the program goals, make sure that, you know, they generally meet those. As you saw, one of the program goals was to have them be new and innovative, and since this year that percentage was low, I think that those grant programs that come in next year that meet that checkbox would probably come higher up on the list, and then naturally I think there would be a second tier if it's just a standard block party, and then there's a large list of new different types of programs, then I would assume that the block parties would fall within that second tier.
Okay. Great launch.
It was
A
a
lot
great
of
launch,
success
yeah.
in year one. It's not always the case with a new program.
Yeah.
Other commissioners? Commissioner Howell?
I wanted to know something about the process for when somebody submits a request. Do they submit a budget saying this is what we think we're going to spend for food, this is what the bouncy house is going to be,
Correct.
and then you basically just give them the whole budget, whatever they've asked for? And that's why there's so much variation.
Yes, so as part of the application, you fill it out online or fill it out on a Word document, submit it to the grant inbox, it comes in there, I receive it, or my colleague Sheila receives it, we review it. As part of that, there's a budget, they'll put food, $250, bounce house, 100, face paint this much, and the budgets vary. Some were very detailed and some were very broad. That's why one of our recommendations was to provide a sample budget, maybe even an Excel format where they could fill in, and it would give them a guide of how detailed we wanted it. But yeah, we would look at that. If we had concerns, we would connect with them and say, well, what do you mean about this exactly? And then, just have conversations with them, shore it up, and then we would print the final version, sign they have to sign an agreement for the grant program. So they would sign that, we would sign it, and then we would approve the budget along with that and resend that back to them. So they knew that we were, gonna fund the grant. They would go purchase everything and then have the event, and then post the event, submit all the receipts to us, and then with the survey,
Okay.
and then we would reimburse it.
And what about permitting? If, for example, the yoga day, presumably they had to have a permit for a group event in the
Yes.
park. Is that fee waived, or is that part of the budget that the
It's
grant covers?
Part of the budget.
Okay. I think it's a great idea to encourage more new and innovative programs. I think that seems to me the clear intent of the council. The principal intent was to do something new and different from what we've done before. I think block parties are great, but I wouldn't want to get in a situation where we're funding Ed's block party every year, so they just have a party every year on the city's expense.
You can come next year if you want.
So I think you do have to be careful about repeat parties, or how you balance that. I think is something worth some concerted thought. Also, in terms of the things that you purchase, since most of them were block parties, it seems that most of the cost is probably food. And I don't know about the emergency kit, the backpacks. Did the grant
We
cover the
reimburse
cost of the
those, correct,
backpacks?
yeah.
So I think it's tricky when you get into that kind of a scenario where for that neighborhood who had a great idea to have an emergency kit arrangement, I think the emergency kit building event maybe is a better kind of an idea where they're pulling stuff together that they maybe making lists and figuring out what they need as opposed to just handing over, here's a backpack. Because then you can get in a situation where this neighborhood gets backpacks and that neighborhood doesn't, so we want to get backpacks next year, and then we're buying backpacks for the whole city.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's obviously an exaggerated example, but I think it's something you need to be concerned about.
Yeah.
What else? I think that's all I have for now. Thanks.
Hi there. I think this is a great showing for the first year, and I think it's a wonderful program. I also just wanted to ditto what Commissioner Hedderly was saying about the emergency kit building. I think it's fabulous, but I did notice for a group of 25, it was $1,000. And from that, I figured it probably was the cost of the backpacks. So I agree with that it's a little bit unsustainable to have that. And so it was okay for the first time, but going forward, I think you should have an eye towards sustainability of the program, and so start to develop metrics for assuming you're at some point going to have a lot more people interested than you have money. And so part of that metrics, I would also build in some caps. I think the purchase of the food is an excellent direction because that's something that people can do as a potluck style. And so I think that funding those kinds of activities that require equipment is a good use of money. But over time, you'll be deciding, but I think you really do need to start developing some kind of metrics to go along with it. And I think that it is also really important to weigh this a new group getting involved versus refunding an old group. Not that you don't want to refund old groups, but you might cap it for a second time, just give less money. So you're subsidizing rather than doing the whole thing. And the other thing I'd like to see built into this, again, toward a sustainability model, is if there's some mechanism for that group of people getting together to document who was in charge, they'll now, what they did as a group so that the paperwork can be handed off. So that what you're doing is you might not fund the group the following year, but you've helped them create a structure within their neighborhood. You've given them some staff input on that so that they get something that continues beyond the event. So that's a model within Girl Scout projects, which I've helped to lead. There's that, you call it, there's a life beyond the project, something that continues on. I forgot exactly the word they use, maybe sustainable. And so you can not everyone always thinks of that. And so that's a way to, you might not fund that same group the next year, but you've given them something to go forward with. I guess we heard about publicity. That was a question of mine. I'd like to see on some of these line items, it doesn't really indicate a neighborhood. So you have a couple, like one of them says the name of the activity was community gathering, and then the association was community at large. I noticed that on 3 different lines, and so I'd like every line to be associated with streets and the neighborhood. And also I'd like to see it plotted on a map, just so you can see the distribution across the city, and sort of with the aim also to encourage, I read in the idea for this event was to encourage new groups to start getting together. So maybe we'll see there's certain areas of the city that are underrepresented over time if you just plot it out.
Those are great suggestions. Thank you so
great.
much.
And great job. This is very exciting, and I think it's money well spent.
Thank you.
I had one comment, is that our neighborhood did this, and people who went enjoyed it. I had a conflict, so I didn't attend. But it's an established group, and it's the same 5% of the people every time. We have picnics every year, and so this wasn't anything new. It was just another getting together of those 5%. It would be really nice if they could have gotten more outreach and got that of the 95% that don't attend. It goes with people who don't know each other. Even though it was a successful event, been much better to get those other 95, but some of those people who never come to any events, get them active, and that would be kickoff to get them into the fold, and so they can meet all the neighbors.
Yeah.
But apart from that, I think it's a very good program. Went over quite well.
That's a great suggestion.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you all for taking time.
Our next item of business is an update on the Rinconada Park long-range plan, and Peter Jensen from the city will lead that discussion.
Ed, since this previous was an action item, do we have to make a motion?
I'm sorry?
Since the previous one that Cash just did for us was an action item, do we need to make a motion? Oh.
I don't think you have to take, I didn't hear the conversation, but I think the main thing with Cash.
Just the feedback was the action?
Feedback, yeah.
Okay.
You don't need a resolution, you're presenting this to council.
No.
Incorporating comments as you like.
Correct, yeah. What we're gonna do is get the minutes and include that in the staff, with the staff report that goes to council, and then, what we'll do is I'll debrief with my colleague Sheila on your feedback, and we'll add some of the metrics that you had mentioned, and, add some of the things you had mentioned into the staff report, so it's just a better staff report, to the council. And then, you're more than welcome to come to that meeting, and we will also be emailing all the recipients to invite them to that meeting as well, so they can also give council their direct feedback.
Great. Thank you.
How's everyone doing?
You made it.
Driving Middlefield this time of night.
I didn't even know if it took
It was
cover,
terrible.
because I knew
I
Millfield
started
backed
like
up.
going through back streets. Oh my goodness. It was terrible.
Do you push the power?
Yeah, because the rain and the drums. I know. It's slippery though.
It's on sleep, I
It's
think.
so funny.
The projector itself.
I think.
Oh.
Isn't it?
Yeah, the projectors
I
and
think it's on
Not
sleep
talking.
mode.
And
it's not talking to it.
Make sure it's not going
I'm
to
not quite
sleep.
sure which button I hit for this projector.
It was on for a long time earlier.
They're powering down.
I'll restart.
It should come back.
We tried turning it off and on.
That
I
always.
tinker around.
Get it? Oh, no.
I don't know that projector.
We'll just turn this off now. The real old school.
Better use caches.
Yeah.
Better use caches.
You have to count to 5 and then
It's
edit.
Already?
Catherine, who turned that on when we first came in?
I turned it
You
on.
turned it on?
Mhm.
Okay. I just wonder if he's pushing the same button. Do you want to see?
Well, his was hooked up to that.
Yeah,
Oh.
previous
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
same projector.
Yeah.
I'm not looking at
It's not
the
on.
computer, sometimes the computer's already on.
Oh, reset that.
Sometimes that's what it is.
Interesting. Fire open. Yeah, and new. Here's
any
that.
of the-
Yeah.
I'm saying, I think we should keep ours to 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So if they run out of time, we drop that off. You know, how are you?
I'm not sure. Might just have to look at the boards.
Yeah, so and these are the copy of that schedule, and this is Darren put together for the 2 weeks here ad hoc.
Looks like your other one's working now, Peter.
Is this one working now? It is working now.
Yeah, they're both working actually. So, so we have the council, which I'm missing,
Here we go.
discussed the last time.
I'm not quite sure how to turn this one
We
off.
have a special meeting.
Got it.
Do you know what that
Maybe the
is?
time
It's
is probably
special.
something.
On the 10th.
Yeah, I got it. This is together.
There we go. I can do the slides here and shit. I think we-
What else are we trying to
Oh,
do?
yeah.
Smaller scales now.
Oh, very nice.
Thanks for doing that, Peter.
Yeah, I tried to do that. The other day, but unless I have my glasses, nothing was. Way too small. Thank you. Do you know?
Yes, please, thank you.
Yes, I noticed that actually. Oh, oh my goodness.
Thank you.
Standing everywhere. There you go, Pat. Here's the second one.
Okay.
Thanks.
The extra one for-
Peter, if you want, I can talk it through for you.
Okay. Now that we have everything up, Joe, we can actually put those plans up as well, so we can reference those as while we review this. Commission, good evening. Peter Jensen, landscape architect for the city of Palo Alto. Tonight, going to review the final still draft, but down to the final plan of the Brinking Out a Long Range Plan. Giving the commission the opportunity to review the plan as a study session before we come back right after the first of the year to have the plan adopted by the commission and then go forward to the council. So what I'd like to do tonight is just briefly touch on kind of what the goals were for the project, then just delve right into the plan and start talking about the plan and breaking those apart into the phases. And then if you have any questions while we talk, or if you want to save those towards the end, that's up to you, then we can discuss those as well. So just to briefly get us started here, take out this trusty laser pointer. This is the existing park. This is an aerial of what it is now. I would say that in general, the structure of the park will be maintained. There is no plan to change any part that of the park that is a significant portion of the park. And I'll go through kind of those things just real quickly so we can identify what is out there now. Currently happening down at this end, and I'll work myself basically from Lucy Stern Junior Museum area down through the park towards the main library. The Girl Scout house exists in this portion currently. The children's playground, that's ages 5 and up, is located in this area here. The main turf area here will remain as it is, pretty much as we see it now. As we move through the park, there is the tennis courts, which will remain in that spot. The pool area, which is a significant part of the park, which will remain in that location. The concrete bowl will remain with modifications to it. The area towards the front of the park, which I describe as the arboretum because of the mature trees and the existing trees are there, will remain in its arboretum form. There's the fire station that anchors the corner of Embarcadero and Newell. The opening basically between that is kind of the connection over to the main library of the park here, and then that entry is bookended on the opposite side by the electrical substation that's there. The other interesting facet of the park itself is the magical forest, located in this location. Dense grove of redwood trees planted a long time ago. That will remain in its form as it is now. Of course, the interesting part about Rinconada and kind of why this project was set forward is that the park is really a link to many public facilities and community facilities that exist around it. I mentioned the Lucy Stern Center, the Junior Museum and Zoo, Walter Hayes School sits on a portion of it, the Art Center, the main library, the Children's Library, and theater in that location. So it really kind of acts as a main hub to this community center that's really happening there. And Rinconada Park is a regional park. Two of the regional parks in Palo Alto, this and Mitchell Park are considered the regional parks. So this one has, again, a special place because of all the other facilities that exist around it as well. So again, why we want to do a long-range plan, we want to create better connections and awareness to all the community facilities that exist around and within the park. We want to coordinate and update the park resources and amenities to reflect current and future needs of the park, users and their guests. Respond to park usage as it relates to surrounding uses and neighborhood. We want to update the park, of course, for building and accessibility codes, infrastructure improvements, and we would like to coordinate the user groups and their objectives. Because of all the facilities that do exist there, there are definitely a lot of user groups there, ranging from the pool to the tennis to the Girl Scout house. This process basically brought all those groups together and stakeholders groups to formulate the plan and basically bring us to where we are today. That process went through a whole community process where we basically started with getting feedback from the community, having a set of 3 plans, 2 plans, and then down to the plan that we are now. I'm basically just kind of melding and forming from those plans, working it down to what was most wanted by the community and what was most needed and sought by the consultant who analyzed the park and looked at the future needs and what we would need there. This is a bunch of text that's very similar to the staff report that you got that talks about kind of the main improvements to and around the park. I'm not going to read all through these. I'm just going to delve into the park now, and then as I speak, we'll talk about these things as they're incorporated into the design of for the long-range plan. Okay. So this is the proposed long-range plan. As you can see from the existing photo that the major elements of the park still exist in pretty much in roughly their current form. The playground area down by the Girl Scout house, the main turf area is maintained. The tennis courts, of course, stay in the location. The pool area, the arboretum maintains itself, the bowl is in its general condition, the magical forest, and then the amenities that sit around that. So in the formation of the long-range plan and what was looked at and reviewed, and that was really kind of a main stipulation by the community, is that they liked the park the way that it was and the way that it was structured, and they really wanted to leave it mostly in that structure. This long-range plan then starts to look at how can we maintain the park as it is now? And then how can we incorporate some aspects, new amenities into the park that maybe are lacking? So as that came to fruition, basically, then that led to us to this final kind of plan that we have here. It's probably easiest to talk about the plan this way first, and then we'll talk about the phases in the next few steps, but I think it's easier to look at the overall plan. I'm going to start basically from Lucy Stern and kind of walk us through what's happening there, highlight the major changes and renovations to it, talk about what the improvements are, what's keeping it there, and then we can talk about how those will be incorporated over time. So we are going to start at the Lucy Stern. The Lucy Stern end is it's kind of a joint project with the Junior Museum and Zoo. So if you haven't heard, the Junior Museum and Zoo is going to go through a remodel in itself. It is a community-based project based on funds that they raise. So it's kind of a wild card into how long that will take to happen. So we've projected that out into the future. And as we talk about phases, this becomes a phase that's kind of in the middle of the process, a few years down the road, to allow that fundraising to take place. The consultants for the Rinconada plan, as well as the Junior Museum and Zoo, did get together though and worked on a design for the parking lot. So this will be a part of the Junior Museum and Zoo work, but this is an important part to the park itself because it provides the main parking lot. It also provides a main entry and connection, and the entry and connection to the Junior Museum and Zoo and Lucy Stern Center. The main element about the parking lot now is that the first driveway from the Embarcadero closest to the Junior Museum and Zoo is closed. So there will be one basically driveway in. And that's to direct basically traffic around to get basically a better flow of traffic through here. It's also to help create a better drop-off at the Junior Museum and Zoo, as well as for the park. Currently, right now, if you've driven through it, the parking lot is kind of haphazard, and the most traffic comes in basically right in front of the Junior Museum and Zoo. There is quite a few children crossing in that path, so this will help basically resolve some of those issues with safety there. Unlike now, this parking lot is proposed to be all connected. Currently, there's a set of curbs through here. That was done because of cross traffic that would come through and use the parking lot as a way to get around traffic basically there. So using this one idea of the driveway here makes that pathway a lot longer to do. There's also this walkway that's through the center of it, which is like a raised tabletop crosswalk that works as like a big speed hump as well. So it's controlling traffic, and it's also providing a link and walkway over directly to Lucy Stern that gets you then to a major kind of node of the park and entry of the park at this point.
So you're limiting the curb between those two?
Yes. The other development in the parking lot itself is the installation of a dumpster area in the parking lot for easy access from the dumpsters. Currently now, if you walk around Rinconada Park, there are dumpsters around the group picnic area. They're just kind of around and they're all over the place. So, and then what's happening is maintenance vehicles are then just driving around and picking up trash, and we would like to reduce that amount of traffic through the park. We'd like to give the dumpster and the garbage collection one place to do that, and we'd also like to group it away from actually the residential areas, because now they're picking up out here by the tennis court, and just for ease of sound for the neighbors, it would be nice to move it down in this location. The other interesting aspect in the development of this is along Middlefield Road, and where the old driveway was, using that portion and creating a bus pull-out or turnout there. That would be for shuttle stop, as well as for buses visiting the Junior Museum and Zoo and allowing them a location to drop off and to stage there, eliminating their aspect from having to come into the parking lot. So that is another kind of road improvement that happens along Middlefield in that location.
Is
Yes.
is that envisioned as a child drop-off for camps as well?
As long as there's it's a drop-off to be used by vehicles as long as there's not buses or shuttles basically filling the bay, then definitely it can be used for that aspect. The other thing too is since we're only going to have one basically connection here is to improve the walkway coming across a Middlefield Road and having a enhanced crosswalk there. Moving into the park then, this is going to become a major entryway, and that entryway is the start of the kind of the main walkway that gets you through the park that starts to link that. So that main walkway kind of follows this path through the park, and it's bookended by two kind of monument entries. When those projects come to fruition, those will be designed, but they're going to be some type of pilaster wall or perhaps an overhead trellis structure with some signage on it, basically demarcating that this and this are the links and major entryways along this path that kind of connect all the other features around the playground or the park itself. That brings you into the area where the children's playground is now. This is a little different than what's existing. This is bringing over the tot lot area currently now sits in this location under an old heritage oak tree. The idea was to bring basically the two playgrounds together so you have one location to supervise children at. Also to bring it away from that oak tree, it's not doing it any favors with the kids playing underneath it. And creating a better basically playground area over there. In conjunction with that, the one existing group picnic area that exists by the Girl Scout house will be renovated, will be very similar to what it is now, but new picnic tables, trash receptacles, all those new amenities will basically be in that location, along with a new screen fence, which it does currently have now. The dumpsters and those things will be removed from that area, making it a lot nicer of a group picnic area to have. The other thing that was mentioned for this area, since the Boy Scouts have their own kind of fire pit area that's over by the theater area, that it would be nice that the Girl Scouts had a little outdoor fire pit area to have basically outdoor events at, like the Boy Scouts do. So that's kind of planned for this area. Now we're only coordinating that as being just a Girl Scout use item. But I think we'll have further conversations if that could be a community use gathering area as well that could perhaps be rented out for events and things of that nature. As we come down and through the major pathway, the turf area, like I said, stays about the same before. The path that actually goes around the turf area was something that was a concern of the community. It's roughly about a quarter mile, about a track distance around this, and it is used for exercise. So that was something that wanted to be maintained. So that basically pathway that flows around the walkway is still maintained. It can be used for that purpose. Up next to the tennis courts, there is a new proposed group picnic area. That was seen by the community as being one of the things that was lacking in Rinconada Park, that there was only one group picnic area, that there needed to be more. The proposed plan has 3 group picnic areas. This being the existing one remains, as we talked about. This one and one in this location here are the 2 new ones. This one along the road out there will have a shade canopy over it and be developed as probably decomposed granite area with picnic tables. The interesting develop here is a little outdoor pavilion, a covered pavilion for community use and outdoor picnics. It's also in conjunction with the tennis community. They would like a small covered sheltered structure out there for their events that they can have check-in or oversee and possibly have their tennis community meetings there. So this is something that they're interested in helping the city actually construct and raise funds for. It would be mainly a community use structure, and then they would have specific times of the year where they would then solely have the use of it when they have the tennis tournaments at that location. The other part of that structure is a storage closet. There's 2 old kind of dilapidated structures that the tennis is using now. that exist in this area, those would be removed, and a portion of that structure would be a large storage closet that they could put equipment in. Moving then closer towards the center, this is another group picnic area, a little bit more developed with a more of a trellis structure, shade structure, and multiple tables there. This is the third of the three group picnic areas proposed for the park. Moving down and then along the pathway, the existing bowl is proposed to stay the same as it is basically now. The community felt that its wide expanse open area was good for group events, community events. I believe the presentation we saw earlier, the yoga picture was actually taken from the bowl. That's where they had that event. So there are a few infrastructural things that we would like to do there. We'd like to create a more defined stage and then provide the infrastructure for the electrical components that can run the speakers, the sound system, things of that nature, that it really is kind of lacking right now. So the bowl in itself and its configuration would stay. We looked at some options of having some removable seating in here, but we're looking basically at the stage there and then doing seating here if there's some type of little performance. There's also conversations about bringing in some movable skateboard equipment now, or they make the skateboard obstacles now. You don't have to build them in concrete anymore like they used to. They actually build them on the ground, and you can attach them and take them away if you'd like to. Originally, this was designed to be a skate bowl for roller skating in the area of roller skating. So to go along and to kind of keep that same effect, even though now skating has developed itself more into different avenues, then keeping it open so roller skating or rollerblading could still be performed there, along with maybe adding some elements for skateboarders to use that area as well, is suggested. The Arboretum area really maintains itself being the same. It's really full of old and grand trees. The idea would be to transition that area and start to plant new trees now in strategic spots, so when the old trees start to die, which that some of them have, then we can get a jump start on getting a new arboretum basically established there without waiting for them to die. In conjunction with that, to help preserve the existing trees that are there, the majority of the turf in that area is proposed to be removed. The turf is not the best thing for native oak trees, which most of those trees are, so it will mostly be mulched, which a majority of the area is now, and the natural, or the trees will allow to stand more protected in that respect. The pool area, the long-range plan didn't specifically get into talking about the pool and what the pool could become or is. It did look at the area around the pool and started to expand the area of the pool deck. That's definitely something that we heard from the swimming community, that during swim meets and during the summertime that the pool deck is very confined and it's overcrowded, and they definitely needed more space there. So you can start to see that this line starts to become the pool deck, where the existing starts to be in this area and right along here. What that does again is it allows for this pool deck to be bigger. On this end, it allows one day for that pool to be made to be a legitimate lap pool there. So it allows that expansion at some time in the future when that pool needs to be renovated, that it can be expanded and be made. Right now, it doesn't even meet the minimum standard of 25 yards. It's actually 23 yards. So it definitely needs some work. The other part that goes along with the pool area that we did talk about was the pool structure itself. There was discussion at the beginning of building a new structure over in this area, but the community felt that it was the best to maintain the existing structure and basically remodel it, renovate it. The gym, the little locker rooms there definitely need a lot of work. There was the proposed idea of adding on a new restroom and a concession stand to that structure. to make it a little bit larger and to be more usable. The concession stand is something that was there before in the past that a lot of community members that remember when it was there really liked and wanted that to come back. So that is something that could come back into the park itself. It would be managed very similar to the new Mitchell Park Library's concession stand there. It has a policy about the types of food that can be served and how it's basically operated during the day. So it's not, I think what it was before was a little hot dog and candy place, and this will provide a little bit more healthier variety of these snacks that are provided at the concession. That building also, like I said, will become half of it the new restroom. Currently there's an old little tiny building there that's the restroom building that's has seen its day and doesn't really meet a lot of standards anymore and just needs to go. So that will open up this area a lot more in the center of the park, which will be nice, connecting visually kind of this link along this walkway, and will also then help to establish a little outdoor patio area next to the concession stand with tables and chairs. The idea would be that the concession stand would be open during the day. People of the community could come there. This would be an area that we would consider putting in Wi-Fi and things of that nature, so you could actually use this as an outdoor working area that could be really usable to people, not just coming to visit the park, but also for the parents waiting to pick up their kids from swimming. Yes, and get us a central gathering point there. Basically, that's in conjunction with the concession stand. As we again travel down the main walkway here, it gets over to another porthole here that's basically some type of wall, pilaster, a trellis structure, signage, something that is visually recognized from basically the main library and art center, that this is an entry into a park that's connecting and drawing basically visitors from there into the park itself. Along that experience, along Newell, the idea is currently there's a very high-powered electrical lines that run there. There's nowhere in the near future that they're going to be underground. So currently there's redwood trees there, and redwood trees are a very tall columnar tree, and now they're being topped. They won't stand that for too much longer until they start to perish there. So the idea would be to actually come in and renovate this entire area, pulling the walkway actually away from Newell Road and letting it meander through this space, then coming back in with appropriate size landscape trees of the appropriate scale so they could survive underneath the power lines without being constantly trimmed, and then creating this as a better link basically over to the art center and the main library itself. There's a little tiny section that sits back here that currently now is kind of a no man's land, and it's just turf that's in that area. This area is being proposed as a bocce court right now. This phase is kind of down the road, so we're proposing an activity area in that space. If in 10 or 15 years there's something that's more popular than bocce, or horseshoes comes back, or other games, then that's what would be basically considered of just having another active area in that. It works out very well because it is kind of buffered by the power station, so it doesn't have a direct impact of too much noise on the neighbors and stuff to bring kind of a new amenity in there. It's also thought that it could replace the shuffleboard, and there actually is a horseshoe in that area, in this area right here, that don't function anymore. They've been broken up by the trees, the concrete's gone. So those things are basically going to be removed and allowing the redwood forest to have a little bit more root space in there as well, which is good. The redwood forest itself there's not too much to do in the redwood forest. Can't really build too much in there. The root system covers basically the entire area. Redwood trees have a very shallow root system, so it impacts them a lot when you start to install pathways, those types of things in there. So there is beaten paths in there that will be maintained. There is the idea of floating a little stage in there. The Magical Forest got a name from an old librarian at the children's library that used to take a reading group down into the Magical Forest and have a little story time there. So that would be a great purpose and function for the Magical Forest again, to bring an element like that to it that could be used then by the children's library to use that. Along Hopkins out there, there are a couple changes. Connecting up the crosswalks better with the streets. Right now, most of these do not have a crosswalk, and when there is a crosswalk, the curb cut is set over and doesn't quite align in most places, so those would be improvements to access the neighborhood. Currently, right now, there is no sidewalk that exists in this area. That would be proposed to come back. As well as this area right now, there is no sidewalk. You actually have to walk behind the cars that are parked here to walk around. So basically the walkway that will be extended kind of all along this full edge. The other improvement that's over there as well is the addition of parking stalls there. Currently there's head-in parking spaces that exist here along the tennis courts. That's proposed to be moved down and addition of more spaces. Currently that's one of the biggest limitations of Rinconada Park now is the parking. It is a regional park, but for the big events that it does not have parking lots that can take up the space. So a lot of the parking is basically happening back in the neighborhood itself, which is okay if you don't live in that neighborhood or want to park there on those days. So we would like to try to increase as much as possible and get the spaces in the parking lot here, along Hopkins there, and then actually using signage for the Walter Hayes parking lot that basically denotes that during non-school hours that the parking lot is open for public parking to use for the park itself. The most recent addition to the long-range plan is a development along Embarcadero Drive, and that is in conjunction with transportation. Currently, if you drive Embarcadero Drive, you know at this point right here the road takes a weird jaunt out, and there's cars at this point are allowed to parallel park along that edge. So to make that condition safer than it is now, it's proposed basically to push back into the park the width of the sidewalk and create a parking lane basically there. What that will do is it'll also extend, there is the plan to actually have a bike lane run down Embarcadero. So that will allow it then to continuously go on its linear fashion as it connects to each one of the blocks. The one thing that does for the park itself is it's proposed that basically inset of the parking extends the full width of Walter Hayes as well. Along this frontage, there is a good setback there. So that can increase basically and get another few parking places, another 15, I believe, basically along that edge. It will allow the bike path to run through there. It will also then allow the traffic to be cleaner in its as you drive at that point and not have the jaunt basically there.
Will that Walter Hayes portion be done with the park renovation, or is that a separate project?
This will be a transportation project, so those things would be done at the same time. Once this is pushed back, then that would be pushed back as well. That's basically kind of my run through of the whole park. Do we want to talk about if there are any questions of this now? I can delve into the little phases of that pretty soon.
I think the phases would be helpful in advance.
Okay. This is an interesting graphic to look at. The yellow line in the middle is that main walkway I was talking about. These are all, the orange are kind of the secondary walkways that connect to that main pathway. And then the purple are the ones that kind of intersperse the secondary walkway. These are calling out the connection points to Walter Hayes School. So when the development of the plan and the major aspect of it is to really link all these amenities together around. So just by looking at this graphic, this basic pathway is kind of that main path that connects all those facilities.
Can you remind me what the material is for each of the different types of paths?
Sure. Currently in the park now, and this is one of the things that really does need to be renovated, is the asphalt walkways. The majority of the pathways in the park are asphalt. They do get driven a lot for maintenance purposes. They're not actually wide enough for maintenance vehicles, so you get this edge driving that's deteriorating them. The idea is to have concrete walkways in the park. That concrete would be treated either with color or some type of aggregate to make them more natural. That was one of definitely things that the community brought up, is that they felt that there was being a lot more concrete brought into the park itself, and that they would like it to see those materials be a lot more natural in their layout there. So they would be colored concrete in the sand, light brown, I would imagine, with some either rock aggregate, and that would make up the main pathway. The other pathways would be colored concrete in the orange, and then the secondary pathways, except for the school, would mostly be decomposed granite, and that is a lot in the arboretum area, just to allow for more infiltration of and percolation of water and oxygen into those areas. So we are proposing that the majority of the pathways are concrete, much longer lasting, durable material than the asphalt is.
Is that bumpy, porous concrete that we talked about at El Camino Park, or is it smooth concrete?
I think that the permeable concrete, which that bumpy concrete you're referring to is, permeable concrete that just allows water to percolate through it very quickly. That will definitely be used along the pathway when it gets into areas, especially in this phase right here where you're getting close to a large heritage oak tree. And we don't want to put too much paving underneath that. So the best of both worlds is that you have paving, but it's still allowing the water to percolate through it. So where that does not happen underneath the canopy of trees, then it would just be solid, basically, concrete walkway.
Smooth, so you
Smooth.
can skate on it. is what
Right.
I'm asking.
Exactly.
So the yellow would all be smooth.
Yes. And the yellow is planned on being, not only the colors are denoting the hierarchy, but there is a hierarchy of sizes as well. So the yellow is a 12-foot wide pathway, where the oranges are 8 to 10, and then you get down to a 4 to 6 with the purple. So you continuously come down. The main walkways also is the access point for the service vehicles. It's giving them a large enough width that they can drive on there cleanly without destroying the landscape along the edge.
I was going to ask about pedestrian and bicycle circulation. Is this a good time to ask that question, or do
Sure.
you want to, shall I ask it while he's on pathways? Can you talk about how the movement of bicycles versus pedestrians is going to work?
They will all be using the same main pathway. That main pathway, right now, it's not proposed to be distinguished at all as markings, so it's not going to be striped as one traffic going one way or the other. That's a main reason why the pathway, besides the maintenance vehicles, are wider, so that you can definitely get pedestrians and bikes can coexist on the same pathway without becoming a hazard to
I've
one
never
another.
seen anyone collide.
Yeah.
It's wide.
So currently, accessing the school is a main pedestrian and bike route. Getting around, and this pathway here is actually kind of a main one that goes through for bikes and pedestrians. Again, that's why those pathways are considered to be hardscape or concrete instead of decomposed granite, so it's a better surface to ride or to walk on, much cleaner. Currently right now, Walter Hayes promotes, and transportation does as well, that school children can use the frontage sidewalk for bicycle riding on, even though they're going to mark and locate a bike lane out in the street. That will continue to be the main access route for children in the morning. When they come up, they will actually get up on the sidewalk and then be on the sidewalk until they get to the bike rack and the main entry at Walter Hayes in that location there. This is the phase plan of the long-range plan. they take into account bigger areas, so they're easier to account for and discuss. There are a few things like this walkway that we see here that's in the purple of Phase 2 that will be part of Phase 2 and will proceed then basically Phase 3 there. Currently now, as far as capital improvements go, there is funding for this upcoming year for $1.2 million to start working on Phase 1. There's also funds appropriated for 2018. It's in the $2 million range to start working on basically the Phase 2 aspect of this. Past that, then there currently aren't funds for the next phases of this project. However, though, that's what the long-range plan is for, is to then help us predict what the next phase will be and when those funds will be appropriated, so we can start to get those on track now and have those funds ready. So when we want to start working on Phase 3, then we're ready to do so.
Do you have any estimate? Is it every 4 years when we do in a phase, or is there?
It's roughly that way. So the long-range plan is set up in a 30-year kind of span. So yes, I would, every 4 to 6 years there will be a new phase basically being worked on.
How long would Phase 1 take for construction?
Phase 1 would probably take about 3 to 4 months for construction. So yes, so then this is now when we're trying to look at basically Phase 1 here. This starts to focus on basically establishing that main walkway through the park and start to build that link coming up. It focuses on building a new group picnic area in that location. And then there are renovation items that go along with the turf area that aren't on here, that some of the irrigation there needs to be fixed in that turf area. So that will be an aspect of the Phase 1 as well. Yes. So the concrete work basically takes up a majority of the funds for that first phase and establishing basically that walkway that comes through there. So that would be basically the Phase 1 work that we would embark on within the next year. Phase 2 would start to look at the turf area and complete whatever irrigation that wasn't completed in the first phase. Look at construction of the next group picnic area, start to revamp the sidewalks and edges through the Arboretum and along this edge down here, as well as doing the work along Hopkins and Newell to help establish this connection point there. So I hope by the end of this phase, then our major kind of walkway here is almost completed, and we have a very clean, accessible walkway that have recognizable entry points here that are starting to do kind of the main job of linking the park together with all the facilities around it. The third phase would focus on the Arboretum area, the turf removal, the renovations to the existing bowl there, and start to address the issues basically in that with, again, the things that always need to be renovated, the site furnishings, the irrigation, the drainage work, things of that nature. And we're looking basically at sometime between 2020 and 2025 to do those things. And this would be in the same realm of that Phase 4 around the Magical Forest, as well as developing basically the activity area along that edge. And Phase 5, which again, this could become Phase 4 or Phase 5. This really depends upon kind of the Junior Museum itself and the development of that. And this, basically all this work will be in conjunction with that work. So,
You'll be dead, don't
Yeah.
well, yes, I can't really say how long that will be. So I would hope that sometime, in the next 5 to 10 years that they will have the money to do their Junior Museum expansion there. And it is quite a large expansion that is several $1 million. So it's going to be a good fundraising effort to get to that point. The phase 6 is then talking about the pool and the expansion of basically the pool deck area, and the working on the structure itself. Currently, there is a CIP to renovate the locker rooms there. There's ongoing conversations about what that extent of that will be, if we're going to repair it for now to bring it up to some type of standard so it's usable, or if we want to make that a larger scale project and really do a full renovation of that. That's just all about conversation about the funds that are available to do basically that work. And then the final phase is the tennis court. One thing that we did not touch upon when I talked about this is that currently around this edge of the tennis court there is a major pathway for people that use the pool. Unfortunately, there is no pathway there. So it's just kind of a makeshift little path that meanders through here. We'd like to make that a real pathway, and to do that is to shift the tennis courts basically over. At some point in this time frame, those tennis courts will have definitely met their life, and we can start to look at redoing some of the paving out there and actually shifting that whole court 15 feet over to this end. That will be in association with replacing all the fencing that goes around it, doing the striping and all those things that then can allow that basic walkway to exist. So those are the phases.
Okay. Questions or comments? Oops, sorry, comments or questions? I didn't read correctly. Commissioner Markovich.
Actually, for the first time in a long time, I do have some questions. So how many people actually wanted the bocce court? Do you have a number on that? I know it's a really very unused corner of the park, but is that really the best use?
That got the highest amount of votes for what could be there, but it was not that high. So, you know, I would say that out of the 50 people that said they wanted something there, then 15 people said that the bocce court would be the best, and then it broke down basically from there. So that's why when I start to talk about it, I talk more about it being an activity area back there. That should reflect something, I don't know if it's bocce. Bocce right now is a big sport and that a lot of people are picking up and playing, but it could be developed as something else over there as well.
And that took out the gazebo at that point too?
Yes, the little gazebo
that
goes
nobody ever
away.
uses? Yeah.
Yes.
Regarding, on that line of what the residents wanted, was there any interest in the dog exercise area?
Not in Rinconada Park. No one brought that up as being like a major element that they wanted to see out there.
There's so much stuff going on in that park. If you look at, can you pull the map back up? I have a question.
Do you want to go back to the full plan?
Yeah.
Let's see if I can move that here fast enough.
Okay, that one. You have the yellow, the major pathway.
Yes.
And right there where you just last dropped it off, the parking lot to Lucy Stern,
Yes.
and just go north of that, where the arrow is,
Over
that
here.
right now is red brick.
Right.
Are you pulling out historical aspects of that building by taking that red brick out and replacing it with this pathway?
No.
Because you're also losing two 20-minute parking spots there
Right.
by doing that.
No, actually, the pathway connects to that brick pathway where it picks up from.
So the brick is staying.
The brick stays. And actually, that's a project that we're working on to renovate that brick pathway right now. It needs a little work, but
Yeah.
it is historical, so.
I had a patron fall and hit his head, and it was really nasty.
Yes. So yes, the existing brick that is there will remain there. It will be fixed as a separate project fairly
Okay.
shortly.
Yeah, it's coming up.
So keeping in mind with your pointer, you have in the parking lot, in the vertical section, you have new refuse bin enclosure?
Yes.
And is that going to replace the really large white dumpster that's behind the actual theater? You have the huge paint shop doors, and then
Right.
to the east of that, you have a big white dumpster that's used by the theaters, and I'm sure it's coincidence, but right after the dump closed, it got full really fast,
Right,
which we're pretty sure it's the residents, because the theaters weren't increasing their,
right. Yes, that would be it's proposed to replace that structure there to have a new
is it the
dumpster
same size?
enclosure.
Well, that one's enormous.
It's enormous, but
Yeah.
it's full all the time.
Right.
I would really have you rethink that,
That's
about
something,
replacing that.
okay.
You can supplement it, but the theater groups would have a real hard time with not having that there. Then the bike lane on Embarcadero, is it a sharrow?
To Sharrow, yes.
So you have a sharrow, then you have parking, and then you have a sidewalk. What's to stop, and I feel bad about these kids that may say, instead of the sidewalk to go to Walter Hayes, I'll just go out here where the big bikes are, and that's just accidents waiting to happen, because when I'm on Alma, and there's the Sharrow is in full use with the bikes and the cars, it's a disaster. And I would just hate to see these kids get hurt. To me, that's just maybe some signage for the kids, better signage, so hey, you guys stay on the sidewalk. I don't know how you want to word it, but I'm really concerned that can be problematic, especially with commuter traffic, and it's converging at the same time everyone's
Right.
going to school.
We can bring that up with transportation and ask them about that.
Okay.
They do have a really great crossing guard.
Oh, no, they're
That guy
fabulous.
is amazing.
He is amazing.
Like, so he won't take anything.
The picnic areas that you're proposing for the magical forest, is there any way they can be kind of a retro look, not the big plastic tables, but more wood that would go in tune with the redwoods, because otherwise they would just stick out like sore thumbs.
Sure.
I'm also concerned with, hey, there's a nice hangout spot because it's not lit at night.
Yes.
So, and I don't want the forest lit at night. I just,
There actually is I can't remember if it's two or just one, but there is actually a pole light that's in there, that we might consider bringing. The light is high above the ground. It's basically up in the canopy of the trees, and it really limits that amount of light and its effectiveness. So we have looked at renovating that light fixture and bringing it down to illuminate the magic forest a little bit more. Because yes, it is a place that does promote some nighttime congregation because it is
Yes,
a little
it does.
dark.
And my last comment is regarding the tennis court. Well, two things on the tennis courts. Instead of shifting everything 15 feet, just move one court over, because everything else can stay. You just move one, it's probably a lot cheaper. But the resurfacing, the Hopkins ones were resurfaced, 2 years ago? And I'm getting complaints all the time that there's problems with the resurfacing of some of the tennis courts that were just newly done. So to keep that in mind when, although you probably won't be working for the city by the time that part of the project, we'll all be retired. That's all I had, thanks.
It's going to be a mandatory distance between tennis courts, right?
Well, yeah, that's currently now it sits as tight as it can be. I mean, it's laid out to be the buffers around them. There's no way to like shrink in between the space to get one over.
Well, it's also, there's a ball wall there. It's a practice ball wall.
Right. Well, the thing that also made it tough as well is that there is a new actually well site that's there.
Yeah.
So if it was just the ball wall, then we might consider actually moving the ball wall. That would be easier. The well site is not basically able to be moved, and it's using actually a tennis court fencing on this side as part of its enclosure. So it's pushed right up against it.
It is.
So it's basically having to slide that court over to create that space. Really, next to the well is what it's bypassing there to create that pathway.
The well is used for landscaping, or what is it?
No, it's an old, it's
Utilities well site
yeah.
used for high volume water. So it's not affiliated, it's just like the power on the corner. It's not affiliated with the park in any way.
It's just there. Oh, and I have people who are thrilled that you're putting in a concession area. They're just thrilled. Because it used to be there.
right. No, the concession area is
Glad to have it
definitely,
back.
most of the residents, especially the ones that can remember it,
Yeah, I remember it.
have very fond memories of it being there, so.
Any other comments down here?
Go ahead.
No, I don't.
Oh, okay. How much coordination have you done with Walter Hayes?
They've been a stakeholder in the process.
And so they know, they've seen this plan and they've reviewed it and given suggestions.
Yes.
And how about, you mentioned along Newell, you'll be widening that sidewalk. Will you also be widening it down from Yellow Arrow down, right next to the fire station?
The fire station sidewalk will remain the same. That's just determined by the fire station itself.
You don't have any control over that portion?
No, that's the fire's property, and it's really too small. Eventually, they're going to actually build a new fire station on that, and it's going to be even a little bit bigger of a structure.
Oh, so they want to give up any space?
No, they don't want to give up any space at all. So, because we did have conversation with them about like the edging and doing something that's cleaner and nicer, and doing more fencing basically, or a different type of fence, and but they definitely are. They don't want to encroach any more on their property there. Yes.
So the sidewalk right at the intersection of Newell and Barcadero, that's a pretty tight corner there. The sidewalk comes in and there's not a lot of space for the kids to get around. It'd be nice to have a little more setback there. But, okay, we don't have control over that. Let's see, how many picnic tables do we have in the park right now? Not that many.
Yeah, probably like 20 and change.
Do we have sufficient picnic tables for the weekends right now?
It's kind of a mixed bag. You could squeeze in more, and it used to be a humongous problem, and they created a special municipal code to stop people from bringing in their own portable tables and barbecues, because the impact of all those people in a park this size, even though it's good size, you were bringing in massive crowds that were crowding noise and litter that were affecting the whole neighborhood. And so that was the impetus of that rule, that law. So I think we would be cautious about adding too many.
Under the Arboretum, there aren't a lot of picnic tables.
No,
It's just
no, it's smaller. And that area, as Peter and Verde designed it and noticed, it works really well as a passive, quiet area. And there are park benches, but not inundated with overly impacted picnic tables, which change the dynamic of it.
How about like the Magical Forest? Are there any benches in there?
There are like 3 benches.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the tennis courts north of the Hopkins, is that part of the park or is that a separate entity?
They're all part of the Brinkenjana.
Okay,
Yeah.
but they're not being touched by any of these phases? They're
The
as is.
Hopkins ones on the right, yeah.
On the north.
North side. These
Yeah.
guys up here, they're just being proposed to stay as.
Just to
they
stay
are.
as is.
Yeah.
Okay. The Tots playground. I really like the idea of moving them together. I know there's an age when you have a couple kids and one wants to be at one park and one wants to be at the other, and you're looking back and forth. So moving together, I think would be a very good idea. The other thing I think I would like to consider is our kids would always go stir crazy on rainy days. So having some type of canopy that would cover the Tot Park that would provide both shade and also rain covering. So you have at least one playground in the city you can go to on rainy days. That would be very good. I don't know if there are drawbacks, I'm sure, but I think that it's worth consideration.
Definitely.
Oh, and also on the far right, where the yellow arrow hits Newell. And Newell is a bike route. And right now there's a curb there, so if you want to go into the park, you have to kind of pop the curb. And it's kind of a tight corner, so if people are coming in and into the bike lane, they don't really have time to get the speed in, so you have to put on your brakes and as the kids pull out. So some type of, and as you draw it on the plans, it is like a semicircle. But have some type of ramp and merging capabilities as opposed to just a 90-degree angle, and all of a sudden the bikes are entering the lane at first and most speed. Having some graceful merging would be useful there. Yeah, I have the same concern about the Embarcadero. It's just so busy. But it would be nice because right now, if you come down Newell, there's really no way to get over to the other right here, this is a bike route right here.
Right.
So you have these two bike routes and a block apart, there's no connection. So having a bike lane going down there would be a very good idea. I really would like that. Also, with Walter Hayes, you show the sidewalks coming down here. Are you replacing the sidewalks right here?
Along the edges of Walter
Yeah.
Hayes? No, they would be left the same.
And how about over on Middlefield here? Replacing those sidewalks, or those are just
No, they
as
would stay the
permanent?
same as well.
Okay. Okay, and yeah, that's it. Very good. Overall, I think the design is very good. Thought it out. Seems to be well designed.
Yes, nice presentation. When you consider that change on Middlefield Road to close off the entryway by the Junior Museum for cars, will there be a traffic study that's part of that to make sure that all works out?
Yes.
Because it's a very congested area, and I noticed that when leaving the Junior Museum and Lucy Stern Center, it's just hard to get out sometimes across the traffic.
Yeah.
So I don't know quite what the solutions are, but it does seem like there has to be a comprehensive
Transportation
examination.
has proposed looking at installing a light there as
No.
well.
No,
I have no
don't do it.
I like the idea of a child drop-off area so that you can keep some parents from even going into the parking lot. So I know that the buses will get priority, but I think it's a really good design feature.
There's also a drop-off in the parking lot. I don't know if you
Right,
noticed that.
I know that, but I just know that parking lot gets really congested.
Yeah.
And I presume when you open it up so that, you know, you have plans for taking away the barrier between the two parking lots, that clearly that would be part of a parking study.
Yes.
Because you don't want to bring back that problem of the cut-through traffic.
Right.
Is there going to be a sand play area for the tot lot that involves any water spigot?
There's no specific elements that are designed into that playground right now, so if that was the desire of the community or the Parks and Rec Commission when that came up to be, then I have no issue
Right,
with
so-
that. I think that's definitely a possibility.
And is there any net loss is there any loss of square feet of play space for the tots when that move is made?
I can't tell you exactly the square footage, but it's pretty much exactly the same size as it is now.
Okay. Because I noticed that there's a lot going on in that area now. I really do support the addition of the fire circle for the Girl Scout house. I think that is a wonderful element. But I just noticed that area is getting a little more crowded now. So I just wanted to make sure that the tots don't lose out as well. To get to the Walter Hayes for overflow parking, is there a pathway that connects into the back of the park? How do people get from the Walter Hayes parking lot to that main pathway?
This pathway here, walking along Middlefield and then in front of the Junior Museum and Zoo.
Can there be signage so people kind of know what they're doing?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. You didn't talk much about this mini entryway off of Embarcadero Road now into the park. I know that's not on the yellow pathway, and I was never a big supporter of a big entryway over there anyway, but can you just say a little bit about what that is like?
The 2 points of access along Embarcadero.
Yes, uh-huh.
Just for street visualization, it is proposed that some type of small-scale monumentation be constructed at these points here, which that be some type of little stacked stone wall, something of that nature that basically attracts or lets you know that basically that is an entryway point into the park itself. There's nothing that's kind of designated along that edge that really calls out that it is a park. If you move by here quick enough, you have the opportunity of missing it. So it's basically just something to establish that there are entries along that point, and there is a park basically that is existing in that space there.
Okay, it makes sense if you're going to make make it a little easier to park over there, I suppose. But my concern was that it was sort of difficult to park over there, so you don't want to advertise it
Right.
as a major entry.
I think, yes, and those would be more used as curb appeal basically for the park in that area, where around those little walls, there would probably be more decorative planting itself, more flowering plants and things of that nature that would just, like I said, add a little bit of curb appeal and aesthetic to that edge of the park itself.
Right. I might have missed this, but did you point out where the bathrooms are?
The bathrooms, let's go back to this. Currently now there's one bathroom in the park and it exists in this area. It's a little tiny building. In the long-range plan, it's proposed that new portion of the existing pool building be added on that has a bathroom. And then it's also been worked out with the Junior Museum and Zoo that their new structure over here will have a bathroom. And that's basically what this thing's basically calling out the entry to that bathroom. So now the park will have two bathrooms, basically one at each end of the park. This one will be key since it's very close to the playgrounds there.
That's what I was concerned about, so I think that's an excellent idea. I'm really glad to hear that is in the plans.
Yes, and you can see that this right now is kind of the proposed line of the zoo itself. Right now it kind of exists in this space here. So this part starts to encroach basically into the park in that area. As a concession for doing such a thing, it was felt that it would be nice to build a bathroom in that portion as well on that structure that was happening there so it could then work in conjunction and have that space. This is definitely going to be a major active space around there, not just with the Junior Museum and Zoo, but with the playgrounds in that areas, as well as the entry points into Walter Hayes. That end of the park is definitely going to be a nice hub of activity.
Right, and I know it's been brought up on our commission before, just we don't want our park shrinking, and so I do have concern over the expansion of the zoo and the loss of footage of the park. So when that comes up, I'm sure it will come to the commission for reviews before those kinds of decisions are made. May I assume that?
I'm sure that it will. I'm not privy to their design outreach, but
It'll come to the commission. I know that the Junior Museum and Zoo staff and the Friends of the Junior Museum and Zoo have been working on design elements already. I haven't seen all of them either, but at some point it does need to come to the commission. It requires a park improvement ordinance, for example. So I can check with the manager there, John Aiken, to learn a little more about the timing when that would happen.
Yeah, because just in presentations like this, I think it's really important to show the old footprint. So when you're giving this kind of presentation, because otherwise you just start to assume that's what it is. So if you could put in the old footprint, I just really appreciate that.
sure. Well, another thing too, this corner and just the park itself is it doesn't have a high activity area. It's not used very much currently. So I think that it's not like moving out into the kind of the major turf area and then taking up basically that kind of main space. I do agree with you that it is tough to encroach on a park and lose some parkland there. But in this case, I think that the zoo works very well with kind of the amenities and the whole regionality of the park that work there. The fact that they're willing to, I think, work along with the park and look at having a bathroom at the end of their structure there. I think that there's some goodwill there that needs to be recognized. So.
Are there any concerns about the use of the area, that skating bowl for skateboarders, just kind of having a stronger presence in the park? Does that seem like it would bring on any safety concerns?
Well, I mean, definitely anytime you're going to introduce some type of skating element into that, there's safety concerns that exist, mostly for the kids riding it. I think that as far as the dynamics go, when we start talking about the park and trying to provide a location to bring in multi-generational user groups, that's something that definitely should be recognized. So it's not definitive yet that the skate equipment will be placed in the bowl, but it does again kind of go along with the original idea of the space for skating and modernizing it a little bit. So, but
Is,
I
is
think it's
that
always,
is there a lot of interest among in the community for skateboarding there?
well, usually the skateboarding community, it isn't the biggest community that comes out to community meetings, so it's hard to gauge their
How much is it used? Right now, if you go on the weekend, is it being used?
not by skateboarders, no. I mean, it's a space that's not used very much at all. It's kind of just empty. I know that a lot of people from the community did say that they taught their kids how to ride their bikes there. So it does, I think, work good as a big open concrete hardscape area. Things for like the yoga workshop or small community concerts, the school gatherings. I think it works well for that space there. I think the addition of some type of skateboard element adds some more diversity and usefulness to the space, but that doesn't mean that's initially or what it has to become with those things.
Because the skateboard park in rear is primarily used by BMX bikes.
Yes.
So you may get that element there, which is fine. They're a good group.
I noticed that they have a really interesting skateboard area within one of the major Mountain View parks. It's Rainstorf. I was walking by there recently, and I thought they were making very good use of a small space in their design, so I think it's worthwhile seeing what they're doing, and it was highly used on the afternoon. I walked by, huge, and I noticed very good behavior. I think maybe self-policing, and I did notice that there was even a gentleman bringing kids through for skateboarding lessons, which I thought was very interesting to kind of have that as another element for youth activities. So if we can integrate that, I think it's great, and if we can use the space efficiently. So my last question is, when we do all this redesign, is it going to increase maintenance costs within this park? I know there's a lot of infrastructure within the park, and when you're doing the major park renovation on this large scale, do you look at how it impacts maintenance costs? And
definitely.
Can you discuss that a little bit?
Yes. So, and that kind of leads us to the selection of materials, things like using concrete instead of asphalt, just because the concrete has a longer life expectancy on it, so that's going to be less maintenance over a long period of time. Not just looking at maintenance, but sustainability as well. Areas that aren't used as high activity areas of the turf are looked at to be diminished or removed, so that continuous maintenance doesn't have to happen, that continuous irrigation doesn't have to happen, and convert those areas to more drought tolerant or native type of plant material there. Definitely the overall goal is to reduce the amount of maintenance that is taking place. Other things like directing the service vehicles just to be on one major path is an area that actually reduces maintenance, because those vehicles do have their own wear and tear on the park itself. So yes, we would like to, in the ways that we can, diminish the amount of maintenance that are there. And maintenance for a park like this is basically looking at pathways, mowing the grass, irrigating it, things of that nature.
Some of the earlier iterations of the plans incorporated certain elements that would definitely have been very high maintenance, really high replacement costs. There was a wood-decked patio around one of the large oak trees that would have been a nightmare to maintain. And through a good kind of vetting process, Peter's, of course, really knowledgeable about what's going to take to maintain this, what's it going to look like when they have to fix this or replace it in 20 years or 15 years. And so did all my staff, give it a careful vetting. And so we eliminated a lot of those elements. We said this will never, you could put it in, and just like the pathways. I remember someone had said in the public meeting, we love DG, it's so natural looking. Yes, it is natural looking until it ruts in and fills with rainwater, and then I have nothing but complaints every week from people saying my kids' shoes and socks are covered with gold dirt. And you go to something like concrete, and we won't have to come back and patch it every 5 years for the next 20 years before it gets replaced. So I think we caught a lot of those earlier iteration maintenance nightmares.
Thank you.
think you all did a really great job incorporating a lot of different comments from a lot of different perspectives, and the plan looks really great. I just want to reiterate a concern that's come up, I think, every time we've looked at this, and that is that southeast corner around the fire station with bikes coming in from Jordan along Newell and then turning left to go into the park. I don't know what the timeline is for that transportation project along Embarcadero, but I think it would be important to do some outreach, that they do some outreach and make sure that the community is aware of what they're doing with the share rows and that we end up with the best solution for safe turning at that corner. Particularly because even though your Walter Hayes kids may often use the sidewalks, your Jordan kids are not going to use the sidewalks. They're just going to swoop around that corner as they do now and into the park. But thank you. I think that's a great plan.
I just had basically one, other than the fact that you've obviously listened to hundreds of citizens and pieces of input for, I don't know how many outreach meetings you did. I was at a few of them, Pat was at a few of them. But it still works as a gestalt. It doesn't look, like it was done by committee. My question, actually pretty similar to what Jennifer said, is that it seems like on the edges here, that's probably owned by transportation, meaning Embarcadero, and then that Kellogg crosswalk that's lighted, which is phenomenal. I was just there this week, and a kid was going, "I need a crosswalk, guys." You're talking to the right guy. Let's work on it. I almost lost the commissioner once or twice when I was leaving your office and walking across that street, too. I don't want us to have to be dependent on, whenever that gets funded for the Children's Museum, to fix a safety problem in the middle of the road. So I really would encourage you to get in touch directly with transportation and say they just have to do that, apart from any of this other stuff. And I'm sure they own the CIP, if it's a CIP or maintenance or whatever. And my comment is similar for Embarcadero. I think that phase is going to be done 15 years from now. So that issue of getting cars back off the street there, which is a bad job. I think we might have taken out one parking space. I think maybe Jaime took out a parking space, which is a little bit helpful. But getting those things there, I mean, if we have to wait 15 years, I mean, you would say radically, I'd be in favor of removing the parallel parking. Because, I mean, and I know that's radical because it's used all the time for picnic players, but it's a hazard. It's just a terrible hazard. So I'd like if you could alert them to that and say, can you just focus on those two things, apart from these phases and apart from whenever Junior Museum finishes up, because they're both, real safety hazards for citizens. Typically. Thank you. Okay. Yeah.
Sir, my last comment, because I want this on the record, is and it's a transportation thing, thinking back to that, hey, let's put a traffic light at the only exit to the parking lot on Millfield. You've got a traffic light at Embarcadero, you have one on Millfield, and I just got two words for you, on the plaza. You would have gridlock. It's the worst possible idea for that I can think of. So I really stress to not even consider that.
Okay, thank you, Peter.
Thanks.
Is there any opportunity to speak from the audience or questions?
Yeah,
fill
no,
out a form.
I said
I
that.
didn't fill out a speaker thing because I was late.
Okay, it's kind of out of order because that should be first, but
Where's
My
the
street cards are in the corner.
was
Oh,
that?
the speaker cards over there.
Well, we can do that ex post facto, but I was just talking about the mic.
Yep, you can use this one. Just come on up.
Yeah, just go to the general area. Please don't move the mic. Just go to the general table area and speak from there.
It's an ambient.
You don't have to
camera.
speak into the mic,
I
just
don't-
speak normally.
You don't have to speak into the mic, just talk to them.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm Howard Hoffman, and I'm the president and founder of Palo Alto Dog Owners. I addressed the commission once before. For some reason, we're not invited to any of the meetings and in terms of process that have been going on here, and I don't know why not, and I don't know how long this has been going on, so pardon my ignorance for not knowing in terms of the process. But I can say that we want to be involved in every single park renovation that's considered in the future. because I thought that it was a standing order from the city council that every time a park was to be redeveloped, there was to be a look for an opportunity. Is there a place to put a dog park, a dog run, some sort of facilities for dog owners? This is the most underserved population in Palo Alto, in my opinion, is dog owners. And so here again, we have another park, another opportunity, and it looks like a big missed opportunity unless some change is made here to put in a dog run. There are 0 dog facilities north of Oregon Expressway in the city of Palo Alto. People from Palo Alto have to go to Menlo Park from the north side, or go get in their car and drive somewhere. There's nothing. So I don't understand why a plan would be to this point with this standing directive from the city council. I don't understand why this plan is here like this with nothing for dogs. Thank you.
Howard, can you fill out a card?
Yeah, thank you. Okay?
I do think we should follow up on that a little bit before we leave this item, that comment, because I know Commissioner Markovich talked about that, and we can't allow this to happen if we've made that as a provision within, that was voted on by our commission as a solution to the dog problems, was to revisit this at every park renovation. And so I really think we have to catch up with that community and fold them into the process. Did you specifically invite various stakeholders, or was it just, how do you think we missed that community? How do you think we missed the dog question when we were doing outreach for this park?
Well, the dog question did come up in the early design phases of the park itself with the community. That was not the main focus of the community to have a dog park in the park. So that was not an area that was developed. One of the areas that was looked at was the bocce court area, as putting a small dog run there. It was felt that the park itself was and its programming that existed already filled the capacity, basically, of the space of the park, and there was not an adequate or large enough area to have a decent-sized dog park in the park itself. And that's how it did not get incorporated into a defined dog space into the design of the park.
Okay. All right, let's move on to the next item. Okay, the next item on the agenda is ad hoc committee and liaison updates, discussion items. One that's specifically called out is the CIP, the Capital Improvement Plan. If you recall, we created an ad hoc committee at the last commission meeting to meet with Greg and Darren and Rob and others to look at the capital improvement projects for coming fiscal year. So that ad hoc committee is Commissioner Rectal and myself, and we've had a number of meetings and a couple of turkey sandwiches, and we're making pretty good progress. So Commissioner Rectal will please recap that. And what we're going to pass around is a few of the capital improvement projects that have been itemized, as well as
Do we need to share?
a chart. I don't know.
We can share.
As well as a chart which Keith will explain in a minute. I think so. I'll pass that down.
Okay, we'll start with the Excel spreadsheet here. And the CIPs are planned on a 5-year cycle, and only the first year is funded, and the remaining years are placeholders. So there's no guarantee that they will be funded in future years. So a lot of these CIPs on the sheet were rollovers from last year, and you can see up top, the color scheme here is the yellow is public works projects and green is community service projects. And each column then is the year. So if you look at 2014, the current, there's a lot of work being done. some of those CIPs.
I was just wondering if we presented it to
Some extras in base in case.
Yeah, there's a lot.
It's on the agenda.
Yeah,
the, okay.
there's quite a few.
I know his
Oh.
Because I think we
Yeah, I think
when we're doing subcommittee, that's where we can make it.
I misunderstood. I think that's-
No.
Okay, so if you look in the 2014 column, there's anything that's shaded is being worked on this current year. And some of those projects will extend into 2015. So then, so the first section of the top part of the spreadsheet is the projects in process. And the second set is the ongoing projects. Those are the ones that get funded every year of varying amounts. And for example, the site furnishing, benches and signage in parks, and that goes on every year. And then the next set is the future CIP projects. These are the ones that are baselined for future, and these were coming from the plan last year and rolled over to this year. And so last year when they made the plan, these were the projects that we had planned in the future. And every year you reevaluate whether you want to fund those or not. But then the bottom part is the catch-up from the IBRC. And then that dovetails into the next, all the, or at least most of the issues on that bottom project are summarized in the CIP handout that says potential capital improvement projects. And Darren will walk through each one of these. And these are the ones that, even though they were not listed in CIP projects for last year, you're considering adding them to the CIP for this year. Does that make sense?
So they'll be for 2014.
2015. We're planning for 2015 right now. So they were not in the plan as of 2014, and they were not in the 5-year plan, but they were, the IBRC said, you're behind in these areas, we need to catch up. So these are ones that we're contemplating to add into the 2015 CIP.
Yeah, we'll add it into the 5-year plan. Some of them might be the outlying years.
Correct.
Yes.
But they will become,
in the,
yeah, if not money for this year, they will have placeholders for future years.
That's exactly right. Thank you. Most of the items on this list are from the IBRC backlog, but a few aren't, and they're denoted. So the first one, and these are in a kind of a tentative priority list that staff has put together. The community garden irrigation is one of those that has been on staff's to-do list. That's the park staff for well over a decade. The irrigation there is the original galvanized pipe. It's heavily corroded, breaks down on an annual basis, and we run the jeopardy of having substantial mainline breaks of this irrigation system to the point where you could kill off a lot of the garden plots if it happened at the wrong time of year. So we've nursed it along as best we can, and now it's at the point where it can no longer wait. So again, even though this one somehow missed the IBRC and hasn't been in the backlog, it's one of those that we're recommending happen sooner rather than later, and that's why you see the year proposed date of 2015. This one would be all 3 of the community gardens. They're all in the same, roughly that same state of disrepair. Buckeye Creek study is an interesting one. This is a creek up at Foothills Park, and this is right next to the main turf area across from the Interpretive Center. And the issue with this particular creek is it's got erosion problems, and sediment is washing down, so it's cutting down and wide, destroying the habitat for one, and depositing heavy sediment and erosion further downstream, causing flooding issues both for the maintenance shop and in John Arriaga's property, just below Foothills Park. It's a hydrological issue that's beyond the scope of our current staff, and so we need to hire a consultant to come in, evaluate this, and give us a plan. And so that's what this study is for. This was on the IBRC's backlog because it has been an ongoing problem. And so again, we're hoping that we can get this study done as soon as possible. You see the 2015 year before those flooding issues do become overly problematic. And hopefully the study would give us some sort of implementation strategy and plan, which will begin a future CIP. Bullware Park, the scope of this one is the playgrounds to renovate and improve. This is a 1993 installation, so they've reached their lifespan and maybe then some. The typical lifespan of most of your playgrounds is 15 to 20 years, depending on the material. Most of your wood-based ones don't make it quite as long. This one's had a pretty good life. It's still we can still squeeze a little bit more out of it. It's not a safety issue. We've done swap outs of any parts that have broken. And that's why you see the replacement time period of 2016. This one's also got a few other associated work. And anytime Peter and I look at a park to renovate, we always, the IBRC might have called out these few highlighted areas, but there's always some things that creep up, some lifespans alter. So you see drinking fountains or lighting perhaps will get coupled with that CIP, at least that's our recommendation. The golf course parking lot, again, this one is not part of the IBRC. However, it makes a lot of sense to take a really old parking lot that suffers from periodic flooding during the rainy season, alligator style cracks in the asphalt, and to couple it with this reconfiguration process. You don't want to have a brand new parking lot, brand new golf course, and have this really archaic looking parking lot that is a disservice to this brand new asset that we've built. And so you'll see the implementation period for this, the year proposed, is to coincide with the golf course reconfiguration, probably at the trail end, so as the bigger construction equipment is coming in and out of that lot, that they're not damaging our new lots. That'd be probably one of the trail end items that come along with that project. But it would be a standalone CIP, not coupled with the overall golf course project.
It also provide parking for Bixby Park.
As we discussed it with Chair Lowing and Commissioner Reckdahl, one concept is to couple that parking lot with the expansion of Bixby that's going on. Part of the Baylands master plan specifically cites not increasing parking within nature preserve. Well, you've got this very large parking lot right next door. It makes great sense to utilize that for some of the overflow from the park, especially because people coming to the park are there to take hikes. So the very short jaunt between that parking lot and the preserve is negligible. It also would be a really great opportune time to add a segment of trail. This is on the airport side. So if you were to exit the golf course parking lot and you want to get to the Baylands, there's nothing there. Right now you have to walk in the street. And it'd be the perfect opportunity to see if we could add a nice pedestrian/bike DG path that brings you into the Baylands and segues you neatly over to Bixby, that new expanded area, or elsewhere. The next one you see is the Foothills Fire Management Plan implementation. This is a management plan that was put together in 2009, and in the scope of work from this plan, they called out about $700,000 worth of work to take care of this backlog of fuel load and of overgrowth in evacuation routes and those kind of associated works, essentially to protect life, infrastructure, those kind of elements. There was a CIP put in place 2 years ago for somewhere in the neighborhood of $250,000 to take care of the most immediate areas, those evacuation routes. So we've been spending that out. It's been slow going. It was just staff spending it, a mixture of fire, emergency services, public work, and CSD, open space staff leading that endeavor. And it's just really slow going, very staff intensive to manage it. And so most recently, we've hired a consultant to work with, I guess, another sub-consultant, the Fire Safe Council, and we're paying them basically, and they help manage that project and spend it out. And that's just taking off now, and it's working well. The catch is that $250,000 will go quickly. We'll spend it out fairly fast and really only scratch the surface of what needs to be done per the plan. So now what needs to happen is that $500,000 approximately of the rest of the work to be done needs to be scheduled out over the next few years. We've listed out as a priority, but we're also thinking this would be best headed by fire department as opposed to community services or public works. So we're right now in dialogue with them, but one way or the other, we want this CIP to move forward. Whether it's CSD has to implement it or get it going, it needs to happen. The fuel load issue is one of tremendous significance. The fire plan itself is like a 300-page document, but in it, if you peruse, and I know it was presented to the commission some time ago, it does highlight the tremendous risk that we run if we don't implement these strategies and techniques. And the last two are the Baylands Comprehensive Conservation Plan. This is a conservation plan essentially is to look at three elements: wildlife, vegetation, and recreation, and how they all combine to work to manage a park. And essentially we're going to use these documents to guide staff to manage these parks properly. We started the process in 2010 at the Baylands and made it maybe a quarter of the way through, and ran out of money, and so the project was cut. And open space staff has long been calling for these plants. We need them, and so do our constituents. We have park users who want to come and do certain kinds of activities, let's say BMX riding on top of Bixby Hills. And staff is knowledgeable enough to say that that's kind of in conflict with the wildlife component of our nature preserve, but we don't have a document that helps say, you know what, we vetted this with the whole community, we vetted it with the scientific community, and said, you know what, you're right, these are inappropriate in this area, but over here it's really good that you do kayaking, you know, windsurfing, etc. We need to catalog that in a plan, and the same would apply to restoration. Right now, we use partnerships with experts in the field. We use our partnerships with top-notch agencies like Fish and Wildlife Service to help provide guidance. We don't have a comprehensive plan that looks like the entire preserve and says, hey, this is where we need to invest your money most wisely to have the best impact. And we started that process, and we need to carry it through. So that's why we prioritized Baylands first, because we got that quarter of the way start. We've already done a lot of community outreach that's still pertinent, and this would just carry that plan to completeness. And then in subsequent years, so this would happen after we finish the Parks Master Plan. It's really, I think, unreasonable to think that we could have multiple big-scale plans like that happen at the same time, because it does involve so much community input and so much staff time. So I think it's best served, and we'll get a better product as we stagger those out year after year. So we'd complete the Baylands and then move right into Foothills, then right into Pearson or Estadero is the game plan. And then the last one you see is the Greer Park dog exercise area. This one, again, was not on the backlog list, but as you heard tonight, there's so many outcries for more opportunities to have dog off-leash areas that were, we had looked at it when we last renovated Greer. We put in a section of fencing along one of the softball fields there that would eventually accommodate this concept of a shared softball field / dog run exercise area. And in our meetings with Commissioner Reckdahl and Chair Lowing, that just seemed like one that really lent itself to something we could do right away. The cost, since we've already done prep at the last project at Greer, is relatively low. The real work would be the outreach. And there's still a lot of work to do with that, but we could push it forward now in the concept phase, get it into, as a placeholder, if you will, into the CIP process. And then if we do enough outreach and it does have the support, we could carry on with it.
So if you look at the bottom of the proposed CIP projects, Darren just went over a lot of them, but we did not talk about the Baylands improvement. We did not talk about Bull Park, and we did not talk about Johnson Park. So those have all been pushed off to the 2019. So they have placeholders beyond the scope of the 5-year plan, but they're still placeholders saying next time we evaluate this, we'll look at the aging, reevaluate how bad those parks are. But the other thing to notice is that the future CIP projects out in 2018, we have several parks that are being scaled. The first one would be the phase 2 of Rinconada, and that's the largest. But then following on, we have Mitchell, we have Hoover, we have Robles, Piers, Cameron, and Seal Parks. So all those parks right now are scheduled, they have, the placeholders are for 2018. We don't have the manpower to do all those in 2018. So some of those placeholders will move to the right. If there's excessive aging, maybe some of them will move to the left. They will not all happen in 2018. So those are all just placeholders in the 5-year, during the 5-year period that we're evaluating right now. Are there any more issues that?
That's current status, and it's still work in process. So.
Okay. Any questions?
Yeah. So what's the next? Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
Johnson Park, so Seal Park was done fairly recently, and Johnson Park not as recent. And I noticed this week that maybe you can speak to it here. I'm not sure. It looks like the swing set has been replaced.
Parts of it have, yeah.
Parts of it.
It was the wooden posts that had rotted out.
Okay.
And so for most of our playgrounds, it's incremental. It doesn't all have to be replaced right away. It's those parts that fail, and we usually try to do those repairs until it gets to the point where a majority of the structure has reached its end of its life, and then it's the full replacement.
So is it just going back, are you putting back the same swing set only with new posts?
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Some people had some questions. Thank you.
So the Johnson Park, that was identified by IBRC?
Yes. Yeah.
Commissioner Croman?
It seems to me like Bull Park was done pretty recently, so can you explain that?
Sure.
I'm a little bit confused if there's really a cycle laid out. I've
Yeah.
often been curious about that, if you have this really fixed schedule and how that works. I'd
Yeah.
like to see some kind of schedule.
It's a great question. We do have one, both internally managed by the Parks Department, and I'll give you just an example. We have every park broken down and all the assets within it. So we'll say X number of square feet of asphalt pathways, DG pathways, concrete pathways. Each of those have a roughly expected lifetime before they have to be replaced. Some of them have interim measures. Let's say asphalt can get a slurry seal multiple times, and that interval might be 15 years. But at some point, it's going to need a rip and replace, and that might happen. A lot of variables, depending on the construction, the base material, the use, whether vehicles are driven on it. But it might need a full base repair, rip and replace at 25 years. So a lot of variables, but we do tie it into this big spreadsheet. So you'll see out 20 years, it'll say this asphalt trail needs to be done again. The benches have a finite time period, and they'll be listed again. Bull Park's a good example. The whole park isn't in the RBRC to be done. It's just that DG path right now. And that's the one was scheduled to be done some time ago. We have done, it's another example of those interim measures. We've top dressed it ourselves, we've rolled and compacted it, and we've squeezed more life out of it before you have to do a full rescale fix of that pathway to squeeze more life. So a lot of those things that might be in the IBRC as backlog, as something we've neglected and missed, have been, I think the word Band-Aid's not fair, but they've been repaired on a smaller scale before it needs a full replacement or a full repair. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that completely makes sense. So it's just parts of the park.
Yes.
And we shouldn't assume it's the whole.
That's correct, for all of those things you see in the IBRC.
And I'm really excited to see the Baylands Comprehensive Conservation Plan in here, because I know that we talk a lot about Bixby, and we don't have the whole picture all the time. And I know we have an ongoing CIP right now. So 2017 still seems kind of far out.
Yeah.
Do you think there's any hope it would be 2016? Or?
It is possible. We were just kind of looking at the load of projects, and I hate to be overly optimistic. You know, we've got even little ones like Scott Park, for example. That was a 2012 project that we should have gotten done, but just because of staff overload and then kind of taking some right turns and left turns on the public process, it just got pushed out and out and out.
My only point is I just want us to be efficient with the money that we're spending, and just make sure that we're doing the most comprehensive approach that we can. I'm not saying we need to do that, but it would just be nice to integrate all the pieces together.
Of the Baylands, you mean?
Of the Baylands.
Yes.
And that it just seems kind of like we're doing that at the end of the process rather than at the beginning of the process.
For the Bixby Park?
For the Bixby
yeah,
Park.
I see what you mean.
That's my only point.
Yeah.
And the reason that we put it at 2017, is that because of staff constraints or that monetary constraints?
I think it was primarily staffing. It is possible to bump that one up. It's just, I mean, it is definitely something that's possible. I just want to be cognizant of the staff load and.
So a consultant will be doing the heavy lifting, but we'll have to work with a consultant to.
You know, that's what we thought in that first go around, and it wasn't the case. It was one of those that if you leave the heavy lifting to the consultant, you'll end up with a cookie cutter plan that you can pull off Google, which is worthless. What we want is someone who's been at that site for a decade and says, you know what, I know the ins and outs of all this. I need to just vet this through a PhD and have you help me figure this out. But if you take your hands off the wheel, I'm afraid you end up with something you don't like.
That makes sense.
Okay, any other questions?
I'd just like to know what the next steps are, what happens next with this.
We need to enter all the CIPs into the software system. I think it's early December 6th is our first deadline to get that in. It's been really helpful to meet with the ad hoc committee to figure out what the priorities might be. So that's sort of the next step on the staff end. I think any sort of new CIPs, the word is that they want to be entered by then, if at all possible. There's still time to make changes after that in terms of priority, shifting between years. Like the Baylands comprehensive plan to, shift it up a year or whatever. That's still possible, but new CIPs, the hope is we would have them in by December 6th.
Subsequent to that, it would go to the Planning and Transportation in April, May to the Finance Committee, and then Council adopts in June.
So is
Okay.
public input or the staff input?
Staff, Elizabeth
Yeah.
Ames from Public Works.
Okay.
Hello, Elizabeth Ames, Public Works. So on December 6th, it really, all of the projects need to be inputted into SAP. So if you have any new projects or you want to elaborate on these projects, we need to know now. And then, after we get this laundry list of projects, then we can kind of whittle those down and prioritize. So you can also help us prioritize these projects as well, so consider that. December 6th.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay.
Is
no,
the ad hoc still tinkering with the order of
Can,
these? Is
can,
that
can do,
still-
yeah, yeah. So if there's input on what the tinkering should be or the priority should be, you hear that now, or?
And I might add, at some point, we'll probably get direction from ASD saying, there's only this much funds left, and of your projects, you're going to have to prioritize, and that's where I think it'd be really handy to meet with the commission or the ad hoc and say, we need some guidance.
But the most important is whether it's 2015 or beyond, whether it's 2017 or 2018. It doesn't make any difference in the sense that there's no money tied to that. It gives you a placeholder of what your thoughts were now, 12 months from now, that'll be good reference. There's nothing preventing you from switching them next year.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
It's been a long week and it's only Tuesday, right, Darren? Other ad hoc committee reports of any kind?
The Scott Park outreach meeting is Thursday night, this Thursday night, 6:30 at Avenidas, and that'll be the only remaining outreach meeting to hear about the plans for Scott Park and figure out the situation.
The plans are, you happy with the plans? We're planning to give them two options, one with the bocce and one without. Is that correct?
Darren, do you want to speak more to this?
Yeah, we aren't showing a plan without the bocce, but
Okay.
it could certainly be one that,
We can talk to that.
yeah. And the game plan had been, and this is based off my conversations with Commissioner Rickdahl and Commissioner Hederly, was we present a plan that has bocce to start with, and then find our common ground areas, find some specifics out, like sand, for example, before we delve too deeply into the ones that we know they're diametrically opposed. It's the bocce issue, it's the basketball issue, where we know we have conflict and disagreement. So find that common ground area and then explain that what we're really trying to do is not debate the issue to death at this meeting, but rather collect your feedback. And then we take it to the commission and say, hey, this is what we heard. And then the commission weigh in and say, okay, our recommendation is going to be X or Y. The only other update I was going to give is the ordinance on prohibiting the feeding of wildlife. I've had two good meetings with animal welfare advocates, and they've agreed that the ordinance makes sense with some slight caveats. Really no changes to the ordinance at all, and it's really just an agreement that they could submit a permit request if they needed to for temporary feeding of cats in certain areas, which was always part of the ordinance anyways, but they wanted clarification. And it was very, very good, and now there's no hold up other than I just need to get a date with council. Then that will move forward.
Good job,
Great, perfect. Okay, no further ad hoc committee or liaison reports. So we'll move to item 5 under general business, which is preparation for the December 2nd City Council study session that Parks and Recs is going to have, which is now at 5:30. Hope you all got that.
5:30, December 2nd.
Right, that note. As you know, this year there was a new shift in procedure, which is that the mayor and the vice mayor asked the chair and vice chair of respective commissions to do kind of a pre-planning meeting. So your chair and vice chair did a pre-planning meeting before that meeting, and then went to that meeting with the mayor and the vice mayor only yesterday. Presented the ideas that we had agreed on at our last commission meeting, which were a few things. And that was talking about, for example, the land bank, golf course facilities, and some shared use dog parks, and what did I leave out? Master plan. So we did that, and
Did you bring up coverlease on it or no?
not directly, no. And basically, the response was, all of those look like great subjects, very interesting subjects. Like to have them all on the agenda for the meeting. And the direction, which we had already intended, of course, was to do our, what we kind of refer to as a look back. Remember, so we do a sheet like this that says, you know, whatever it is, the top 15 things we've done in the last 12 months, just so they know we've done something. Because, you know, they might not, they're real busy. So talking about kind of that, and so then subsequent to that meeting, Jennifer and I met again to figure out, you know, how to structure this. So why don't you came up with?
Yeah, so this is what. So we just tried to flesh out a little bit more what we meant by those, what we might talk about in those categories of items. The look back list, it was clear from our meeting with the mayor and the vice mayor that they did not understand, they didn't know very much about the new field use policy revisions and what they were and what the impact has been. So they would really like to have, when we talk about our look back, they'd like to have us elaborate very briefly about that. The key point being through that reallocation, efficient reallocation of fields, we're basically meeting all the current demand for resident use, is our sense.
Well,
This week.
opinions will vary on that one a little bit, depends. I mean, certainly not meeting all of the adult residents needs, but of course we know those residents playing in leagues that have a lot of non-residents. So it just
Right.
depends how you look at it. I don't think
We looked at it in terms of the field allocation, which, you know, we're told we have enough fields for people's practices and for people's games with the new field policy.
That everybody's not getting their first choice of slot.
That's right, yeah.
But there are enough fields to accommodate everybody to do what they're needing to do.
Have
So-
you spoken
so
to
we're
the baseball people? Because that's not what
Yeah.
I'm hearing.
This is what we're
Little
hearing
League
from
people?
Adam.
I directly talked to Little League.
Okay, because I haven't heard anything since then.
Well,
Yeah.
fall ball, Little League was not able to have a full, they had to cut people because they did not have enough food space.
Part of the trouble is there's an insatiable demand. I mean, really. So, you know,
So what-
Adam's making it work, but if they could have more, whether it's AYSO or some of the clubs or Little League, they would take it and use it. Is that demand? Is it a need or a want? I just, you know.
So hold that for a second,
Okay.
because it factors into the land bank issue, and that's why we're bringing it up here.
And also, I think when we talk about it, we have to talk about, are we satisfying it based on the policy? And we work so hard to identify the prioritization that it muddies the waters to talk about groups that don't make those criteria, that don't make it into the various groups. I think we have to be very specific when we talk about it, based on given our current policy, are those groups getting the fields they need? We say whether that's yes or no, and then we can talk about people who are outside of the policy.
Right, that would be easy to say. So like all groups that have 50% or more residents, their needs are being met with existing fields.
Okay, and that
Oh,
would
Little
not, that
League
would
is
be accurate.
100% residents, that's a little special case, but if you talk about soccer fields, yes.
So Little League, their needs are not being met, is what you're saying?
Correct.
This is
Well,
the
part
first
of it.
I've heard about that.
Yeah, not for fall ball. because there's
which
competition.
means,
It's not their season, so now Little League is playing year-round.
have they recently expanded? Is that why there's a difference?
So it's being met based on their seasonal, they don't have priority right now, correct?
For the
Within
fall?
For fall ball.
They
they're
don't
second.
have priority.
They're
So,
second
let,
priority. Yeah.
we're trying to get this structured
Yes.
first, and then after we get it structured to see what you want to talk about, you can decide not to talk about this at all. Then we'll figure out, what parts of it to do, and if we should take stuff off, because there's not enough time. So if
Okay.
Jennifer could just kind of run through the structure.
So field use, I think we will need to discuss that some more to figure out what we can say about it.
Right.
And I think if there's something we're saying, then we should say it. If it's not, then we shouldn't. So that was one, we haven't put together a look-back list for this past year yet, but that's one of the things that stands out as something that's worth highlighting. Then we want to talk about the long-range master plan. They were interested in having that put in context of the general comp plan goals. They're very interested in understanding kind of what the comp plan is asking of us in terms of acres of parkland per citizen. Isn't there guidelines about that? And geographic distribution, how far you have to walk to get to a park. So they can have a better understanding for a variety of issues. But in talking about the long-range master plan, they wanted to sort of frame the comp plan goals, talk about what the framework is of the long-range master plan, what we expect to get out of it, and I think what we want to get out of it is the inventory of current facilities as well as gaps and opportunities, and that allow us to set priorities for holistic perspective and integrate them into our CIP process moving forward. So I am stumbling through this a little bit, so I'm distracted by that field use issue. So to back up a second, the long-range master plan, we want to give them a framework about the comp plan and what the master plan is expected to do and what our role is going to be, that we're going to be working closely, as I understand it, with the consultant to design surveys, conduct outreach, interpret feedback, and then the deliverables. Then the next item is the Baylands Land Bank. We're, of course, aware that council's focused on using that space to expand athletic fields. And getting back to the field use question, what we've been hearing here is that at formal commission meetings, the magnitude of the need is unclear. It's not, especially in light of the gains we've realized through the field use policy, it's not clear that we have that desperate need for fields that we did when the Got Fields report came out, which is driving their interest. So we wanted to put that land bank in that, we wanted to sort of give them a chance to step back and breathe before diving into a million fields. So we wanted to spend a couple minutes talking about
What's
that.
the earliest that we can make these fields? If they wanted to, when will the land bank be ready for use?
Well, the plan for the golf course is to start in April of 2014 and to finish summer of 2015. So sometime in that period would be the earliest we could build, and probably towards the end of that, because it's sort of a staging area for the golf course project. Now, keep in mind there's no funding, for the land bank.
Right. You said 2015 would be the earliest.
I think, yeah.
So really the key question here around the land bank is whether or not to wait for the master plan to figure out what our need, to understand what our need is, or whether to barrel ahead with fields. And I think their inclination, it seems, may be to barrel ahead with fields. So they're going to want to know from us, or they'll probably have some questions about whether they ought to barrel ahead or whether they shouldn't from our perspective. So that's why this is on here and that.
And the shorter term, just to kind of further answer your question, the shorter term issue is, if the master plan is going to take a year and a half to do, the mayor wants to know, do we have to build fields before a year and a half to address current needs? And I think under any circumstance, the answer is no. We can get by with the next year and a half, which means that we definitely have time to do the master plan to help infuse the definition of what the needs out there should be. And even if they're fields, they're not necessarily 5, because that's how many medium-sized fields you can jam in. So that's kind of the tone of what we're trying to set up here.
Well, and also, El Camino Park will be back in about a year and a half.
That's right.
And that's a soccer field and a softball, baseball field.
Right.
And we also wanted to emphasize that at the Baylands, we believe there are all sorts of issues. It's not just whether to do fields or not, but if you do fields, there are major accessibility, access problems,
Yes.
ecological problems. So we want to get those concerns on the table when we have them in front of us, so that they understand that's part of what makes us step back and look.
Yes, I think the message should be that we don't want to barrel ahead because we have
Right.
all these outstanding issues. We have a new field use policy that we've worked very hard on. We want to evaluate that, and we can tell right now, based on the field use policy, we're not in a dire state.
Right.
You could say we should change the field use policy and make sure everyone gets to play year-round, every sport in the city, but that's not our policy decision.
Right.
And so within our policy decision, it's working, and the more we can emphasize that, we're going to get what we want, which is these needs assessments.
So then the next thing we wanted to talk about was the golf course facilities, the entrance, the clubhouse, the parking lot, that much more urgent than fields is really coming up with funding to complete the golf course, because full enjoyment of that brand new golf course is not going to be easy to get without the associated services. So we want to highlight that for them and make ourselves available for whatever we can do to facilitate that process. Then number 5 was dog parks. As we all know, there's significant unmet demand. We are hoping the long-range master plan will help us target our efforts and investments to accommodate the best suited neighborhood park arrangement for some walkable neighborhood dog parks. And at the same time, we want to also explore a shared use pilot, which we've talked about here before and never made any forward progress on, allowing shared use of fenced athletic fields for dogs to actually have room to really run. We'll bring to their attention the Menlo Park model, which has been a successful partnership over at Newland Park since 2005, I believe. And also, we want to bring their attention to the Palo Alto Dog Owners Group, which I think you guys have current membership of a few hundred now, which is great. I think that's really key to making a shared use model possible in Palo Alto, so we want to highlight that as something we want to really spend some time looking into the best location, whether it's Greer, whether it's Baylands, whether it's somewhere else, and figuring out the partnerships within the community that we need to build to make that possible, because surely this will be a controversial issue. Then finally, we had Cubberley on here, which we didn't talk to them about yesterday, but the question to you all is whether you think we should bring it up again. I believe they've started moving forward with, they've directed their lease negotiators, but haven't started negotiations for the lease. Is that true, or is that?
I think they started. It's really a negotiation between Jim Kane and Kevin Skelly, who are the sort of chief negotiators, and they're getting direction from both boards, the school board and the city council. And the city council's given Jim pretty clear direction on at least 2 different closed study sessions.
Okay. So the question is whether we want to bring their attention back to our recommendation regarding the Cubberley Community Advisory Committee recommendation, what the key things are we hope that they're keeping in mind as they're moving forward, and those are outlined here in the 3 bullet points. If we did the other thing we were trying to figure out was how to give everyone a chance to have something to talk about at the meeting. That gave us...
Or if people wanted to do that.
Or if they want to have a chance
right,
to talk.
if that's what you guys want to split it up, that's fine.
Right, that's when we could split it up, have everybody have a role, we could pick and choose. I don't know, there are 6 items, and 6 of us will be there. So we thought it would be arrangeable that way. We had some sort of guesses at who might be interested or willing in doing each section. We were thinking that the long-range master plan, Deirdre, might be good for you to do since you've been involved in the consultant selection, so I think you're more familiar with the RFP than the rest of us are. So that's a possibility, and also I think you've dug into the comp plan quite a bit. Baylands, we thought maybe Ed, because he and I are on the land bank ad hoc. We thought Keith for the golf course facility, since you, I think, talked about that a lot in the CIP process. I could do the dogs, and we were thinking Stacy maybe for the Cubberley project. And these, I'm not looking to make assignments. This we were trying to brainstorm who could do this, who might want to do this, and we were thinking, Pat, maybe you could do the intro, look back list story.
See, we only have an hour, and I just see that the council's gonna want to talk to us about their concerns. We're not gonna have this much time to do all of this.
Yeah,
They
that's
said
right.
they were looking for 15, 20 minutes from us, so that would, if we did 3 minutes for each item, then we're done.
But to put it to that point, and we talked about this offline, but wanted to include it, I'm not sure we have time for Coverly. To me, that's
Yeah.
the one that should be trimmed, not just because we didn't pre-discuss it with them, but, you know, relative to these other issues, they're pretty interesting issues. And I think they're gonna, councils wanna give us a lot of comments back on that. So to me, that's the one that I think can be trimmed to save time.
The other piece of that is we were thinking maybe we should put some stuff in their packet, so we can, in their packet, we can give them our Coverly recommendation again, so they have it fresh in front of them.
Yeah.
And maybe the field use fact sheet, or I'm not sure what paper is best for the field use, but there might be something, field use policy that we could throw in there. The look back list we could throw in there. And then maybe we don't have to actually talk about Coverly. I think we do have to talk briefly about the field use policy, because they asked specifically for that.
See, our commission does more than this. We're not just land use decisions, and based on some of the comments that I read
Right.
in our packet this week, it would be nice if we had almost here's what we do. And it goes, we don't have to discuss it, it goes in their packet. Things like the classes that fall under our purview under recreation directly correlate to the 41 developmental assets, which Project Safety Net has been working so hard to help our youth with. And it's just, I think we need to have more than just land use decision subjects go into that packet. It can just be a short list, but.
So you're saying in addition to what we're calling the look back?
So you're
Yeah,
saying
she's talking
general
about her
categories?
General categories.
It could
that are-
just be an
that
adjunct.
They encompass the stuff that we look at.
Do you want to take a shot at writing something up?
I could work with Rob on that. It's not
That'd be great.
necessarily something that needs to be spoken in the meeting, but it
Right.
should be included in their packet.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is to put the look back in there for sure, not read all that out.
I still, this whole thing about each of us take a section, that's just so, some people talk longer than others, and it just seems like it's just, we're all just trying to pile on. I'm perfectly happy to not say anything, for example, because I mainly want to hear what the council has to say. That's because I hear from us all the time, it'd be nice to hear what they need or want.
Yeah, I mean, as Jennifer condensed down what we had talked about, terrific job. I mean, really, all you have to do is read these bullet points, who's ever presenting it. So Keith can just, if you agree with them, you know, Keith can pick up the one on golf course facilities and basically say, we need a new parking lot and a front entrance to a phenomenal new Baylands resort to make, you know, to make it fit and increase the revenue. And it's right there. Next.
But also the clubhouse is not, there's no funding for the clubhouse right now.
Right.
Well, there's no funding until we just put that in the CIP budget for the parking lot either.
Yeah.
So why didn't you put a
And-
CIP for,
I mean, that was one of the things that Greg had talked about is, do you lease it out and have the leasee remodel it? Do you remodel it for the leasee? What is the best interest of the city? That's an open issue.
It is an open issue.
Yeah.
But what it says on here is basically,
We have to,
again, as it was written up, is this all CIP? Is this partly bond? Is this private donors? You know, we gotta figure that out. So the idea of taking these issues to the mayor and the vice mayor is to say, you know, as we said at the last meeting, is just to see if there's interest in these, or if they're too controversial, or if they're dead, we don't wanna talk about these anymore, we do them. And they liked everything, so they'd like to hear that. And our claim was, we'll take them on. You know, we'll kind of spearhead these things, whatever has to be done, not single-handedly, like, you know, as I mentioned to the mayor, we need some funding for the golf course. He goes, yeah, well, work on that. Great, so we'll do that.
so like I say, we're not desperately tied to having somebody do each piece. Whatever you all are interested in doing, we'd like anybody who was interested in speaking, we would like to have you speak. And it can be about any of these subjects, or if there's another subject that you think we should integrate in there somehow, we can figure out how to do that as well.
I think it's good if we all just say a couple minutes. I don't know. That's kind of what Greg Schmidt recommended last meeting, because they're interested in sort of who the commission is, but keep it really short. I mean,
Yeah,
you've
like
done
2
all
or
this
3
work to keep it really short.
You can keep it to 2 minutes for each bit.
I mean, Pat, you could even just, I think you have a really good idea, like who are we on a broad level? So you wouldn't go over our to-do, our look-back list, you would go over who we are. Like, read the bullet points, those 4 bullet points or whatever. I don't know. Someone has to say it.
I'll work with Rob offline on that.
Yeah, that's fine. If we want to put stuff in, material in the packet, the sooner the better.
What's the deadline?
This week, really, would be best if we could.
By Friday? Is that what that means?
No problem. I'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because next Wednesdays are
Yeah.
6 different people.
to get in there.
Yeah, but it sounds like it's going to be fairly simple. I mean, that would be easy. The cover
Yeah.
report is just a quick attachment. You're not actually going to include this. This is
No,
the
no, no.
talking points, right?
Right.
Yeah, so,
Yeah, so this, I've lost my list. Field use, I don't know what you all think about field use. What do you think, Rob? Do we have?
well, I'm just thinking, we do have some FAQs, that we
That's
worked
what-
on when we had lots of people asking different questions, but I don't know if that's
I
quite
don't know if that gets it.
right.
Maybe we don't include anything,
And
we just
they
talk
do
about
You
it.
might have to make up bullet points about this one. Say, sort of executive summary of major changes, practice times were skittered so you can get 2
And Adam
practice
could do
people.
that
Oh, yeah.
Adam has
Yeah.
really good
Just
slides
a
on
one-pager
that.
executive summary on changes, so they have that in advance.
I think that would be really good. They voted on that as a consent
Yeah.
item,
Yeah.
so they might not have, they didn't really maybe discuss that at length or
They didn't
digest
discuss it
it.
at all.
They didn't
They didn't
discuss it
di-
at all.
They
So-
didn't know what was in it at all.
So then I think we should, I think that just Adam could do a really nice diagram of what the changes are.
Yeah, I mean, we had a staff report that went with that, so we could probably just pull from that. I think
think
we had
that'd
a
be-
bullet point.
I think that'd be really good.
Make that happen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay.
Brief.
Yeah.
So what do you think about the master plan?
I'm willing to speak very briefly on it. I'll have to,
That's the key word for all of us, that word brief.
I'll have to
Brief
review.
documents, brief speeches.
Maybe Greg Batts would be the, or you, Rob, just to.
I believe the contract was approved last night with
Okay.
MIG, so we're off and running.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right,
These one-
because,
The stuff that Jennifer put in here is really key about the.
So
The
you
comp
want me
plan
to-
piece is really what's still outstanding. I don't know what to include for the comp plan. But as far as the master plan, if this is not incorrect,
right, I think that's a accurate statement. I mean, we want to know what people are happy with and where we have gaps. Because the problem that you run into with some of this vetting is that you're always focused on where the problems are and you ignore where everyone's really happy.
Right.
So that's one thing that came out of the process is we
Right.
do want to evaluate that.
so this is really what they're interested in, is what we're gonna get out of it. So on one level, they're interested in general context about parks and recreation, and that's why this comp plan thing is there. But on the other hand, they wanna know that, what's the deal with this master plan?
Right.
Okay, and then
And I
I
can
think
talk
the,
to you.
the Baylands piece is very straightforward, and so is the golf course piece that, and the dog parks, Jennifer kind of knows about that Menlo Park model, which would be helpful.
Can I ask one thing about number 3? Are you going to put in our recommendation? We might as well reiterate that because we wrote up that recommendation around the land bank.
It was really around the Julia Morgan
It was,
building.
yeah, but
Yeah, but
I think there was
basically the
one sentence
recommendation,
about the land bank.
the essential recommendation,
Was there a paragraph?
Yeah.
Oh, good, okay.
the essential recommendation is at the bottom, which is that we don't think you should do anything with the land bank right now. And it certainly shouldn't be fill that place up with fields. It's let's do the master plan and figure out what community needs are for the next 15
Right.
years and give a plan to that thing.
And I think you should also highlight the date of the Gott Fields report because people forget
Yeah.
how old that is.
What was that date?
2001?
Yeah,
Yeah,
and,
it's a long
and I
time.
think it's really good to say what has been done since that because we've brought online El Camino well, we're bringing online
And synthetic turf.
synthetic, so I think that's really good just to remind them because they forget all of that.
Very good.
What is the dot?
Describing the.
It's just a really old report out that showed that we had unmet need for soccer fields in 2001, and that's before we added the 2 Mayfield fields to turf.
So, Pat, last chance. So the idea on the look back thing was only to say, you know, here's 15 things that we did, whatever this is, whatever it's gonna be, that we'll pick up, you know, essential stuff. But we wanted to emphasize 1 or 2 things, one of which is the fields policy, because that was on the consent calendar, reference it in your packet. And there are some significant changes there that, you know, have made the thing more efficient. That's all, you know, I'll say about that. So the question is, you know, do you want to do that one, or do you want somebody else to do it?
What happened to about the other stuff that we do that Deirdre mentioned?
Right, I
That's
thought
gonna
that,
go in the packet.
right, but I
That's what
thought
she
that Pat could highlight the bullet points, the broad bullet points, because that's where we really want to emphasize. They can read the things that we've done. And I thought that you would be the one to emphasize anything to do with fields.
I can do that. I can
Take that off of
I can
Pat's
take the
plate.
fields changes relative to the
Exactly,
values.
and then
That's fine.
Pat can be very clean on broad,
That's a good
big
amendment.
picture.
That's
So I
good.
just say, I'll work with Robin on land use, recreation, youth well-being, that kind of thing, and then it cuts down into, you guys drill down a little more.
Yeah,
I
Okay,
think that's really
so
good.
then I start it and then.
community building.
Yeah,
it
tie
takes-
into what we did tonight, reviewing caches, the program.
But do you also want to go back through your very neat minutes, I'm sure you have somewhere on your shelf, of, you know, 12 important things that we accomplished?
Oh, God, I wouldn't know where that
That
stuff
would
is.
be on the list, don't you have the list?
We don't have
Well,
a, no,
we have to
don't
do one
have
for
a
13, we're just trying to figure out who to do
Yeah.
it. I mean, I can do it, you can do it,
I'll let you do it.
great
Yeah.
delegation.
I'm not in favor of me talking at all. I'd be happy to not say anything,
There's not gonna be
so.
any talk about that, that's just gonna go in the packet. So I'll do that.
Okay.
So we have looking back in the packet,
Yeah.
fields use efficiency, a summary, and the Coverly recommendation. Are they the
And-
only 3 things?
and the list of what we do, of what our jurisdiction is, right? Or were you just gonna talk that?
No, I think a few bullet points on what Pat's going to say, and then our accomplishments will all be written out, but Pat won't say the accomplishments.
No.
Okay. That's a wrap. You good
Yeah.
with that, Keith?
Well, I'm just wondering, how familiar is the council with Parks and Rec? Are some of the?
Some are, some aren't.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that's a good answer.
And so then, if some aren't, then we should have that list of who we are and what do we do.
That is gonna be
Yeah.
done.
Pat will
And
cover
that's gonna be in
that.
the packet.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, that,
Yeah, I mean, I wonder whether we can combine it with looking back.
Yeah.
You know, just have one document.
I think that-
Absolutely, like top
could be at
bullet
the top
points, who we
section.
Yeah,
are,
what we do.
bottom one's what we've done this last year.
Yeah, yeah. So I'll connect with both.
Yeah.
Okay.
See how that works. Right,
Okay.
5:30,
Okay.
December
So
6th.
1 hour.
5:30.
In the, where is it? Conference room?
Yeah,
Council conference room?
council conference room,
What day of the week is that?
Monday,
Monday.
Okay,
Monday after Thanksgiving.
then we'll move on to announcements.
Tuesdays.
There's so much paper, I just lost my
Yeah.
agenda, but I know that's next.
Oh, that's,
Yeah, same issue. Any announcements?
I just have a couple. One, I was late today because, I don't know if Darren mentioned it, but I was at the Policy and Services Committee meeting. That was at 6, and we were talking about a new funding stream for teen services. And, you know, you may remember more than a decade ago, there was a teen center downtown called The House. And at that time, the then youth council and then city council made a deal of sorts to give up the teen center in hopes of generating revenue from leasing that space, and that revenue then would go to teen programs. It didn't generate any revenue for a long time, but 2009 it started to generate a little bit of revenue, and over the last 4 years it's generated about $200,000 in revenue. And the expectation is it'll generate about $75,000 a year after that, every year from here forward. So we're working on how best to spend that money and recommending that through policy and services and council. So one of the things that we asked policy and services about tonight was a calendar of events for teens. in one place where they can just see what's happening, what's low. And then the second item we're asking them to fund is a evening drop-in program for high schoolers at the new Mitchell Park Center. One of the things we've heard a lot about, we've been doing a lot of outreach these last couple of months with teens. A big survey. We did this focus group with teens at Lucy Stern where we had them map out what they think is missing. In any event, unstructured, somewhat unstructured, low-cost food, stress-reducing type of space is sort of top of the list. And so we want to make that happen as soon as we open up the new center.
In the dark hours.
In the evening hours, like probably Thursday or Friday, maybe it's an 8 to midnight type of thing.
Yeah.
So exciting. They all appreciated that and unanimously voted that forward. So
Midnight seems a little late.
I know, maybe 11. I don't want to be there at midnight.
I don't
But
know
they
that-
do.
But
They
do.
don't have anywhere to go if
Yeah.
they're going to go out, right?
Yeah.
Oh, on a Friday night, that's okay, but the Thursday night, maybe not.
Yeah, Thursday's a big homework night for sure. Sorry. And then the other thing I wanted to mention, there was the commission recognition event 4 weeks ago that unfortunately none of you could attend. But there were little gift bags handed out and proclamations, and I accepted them all on your behalf.
We'll check and see if any are missing.
Yeah, no, they're there, so you can take that as you leave.
Put a sandwich in.
Sorry to leave you hanging alone.
Yes.
Is that awkward?
It was a bit awkward because we were the only commission that didn't have any representative.
I was there. Paul Loesch was there.
Paul was there. I invited Paul, thank goodness. And I invited Daria as well, but she couldn't make it. But we had a big game that night, right? The football
Yeah.
game, and I know several people were sick or really feeling not good. So this is the first time they did it. It was very nice. They did a really nice job. Lots of people, most of the council was there. It was well done. So I think they're going to do it again next year.
To make up for it next year.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's not the same day as Stanford football.
Yeah. So that was.
Okay.
I had a go back here. Tree mitigation survey. It's supposed to be done early December was our way.
I didn't have an update on it. Maybe you haven't heard anything here.
It wasn't supposed to come back.
The important thing that we're working on is the company that's doing the event. Is that what you're talking
Yeah.
about?
It says tree mitigation survey due in early December.
For the EIR.
EIR to commission in December.
Right.
That's the plan. So that's December 10th. It's a big golf course EIR tree mitigation, discussion.
Okay.
Is the EIR going for planning and transportation tomorrow?
No, it's December 11th, the day after our
Okay.
commission meeting, and then the plan is to go to city council in January 20th.
Right, I'm really glad that you brought that up, Keith, because we need to keep on top of that consulting firm that's giving the feedback
Yeah.
on that. How are we going to hear about that?
We'll have to check with Walter. He's the lead on this.
Urban ecos.
Yeah.
I think he's got the range to call the next meeting too. And it's probably when that study's ready. Don't you think?
There ought to be a meeting for certain before the commission meeting.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I'll ping him, and you can ping him too, just let's keep this thing moving.
Okay.
Yeah.
Call that meeting.
So the EIR is not going to be ready for the 10th meeting?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Which is why we're meeting on the 10th, right?
Yeah.
Basically for that.
That's right.
Okay, and that is the only agenda item that we know of so far.
So far, right. We'll have to see what else comes up. That's a big one. That's going to be a big topic.
Yeah.
I can't think of anything else at the moment.
And after the Scott Park meeting on Thursday, what's the next
Scott
step there?
Park will come.
Then
That
there,
could come back, yeah.
so that could come back to us.
But probably not by the 10th, I wouldn't think.
Well, unless everybody's in agreement and happy with one another's.
Very funny, pen it in.
And bring it forward. I know Dara really wants to,
I know what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah, he is.
Okay?
Okay.
Any other agenda items for that meeting? No? Any other things to talk about?
Well, Scott Park, if anyone else is interested.
Thursday night.
It doesn't have to be just the ad hoc people.
Should be
Oh,
lively.
absolutely.
I move we adjourn.
There's a plan.
I'll second it.
All right.
Okay.
All in favor?
All right.
See you on the 10th, other than.
Feeling better?